national soccer team was doing, but everywhere you went was just people talking on television, on radio, whatever about this tournament. It was a blast to be down in South America. We didn't do this on purpose with the timing, but it was great to be there
Uh,
for all of it.
I saw you had to pack a winter coat. Looks like it snowed down there a little bit.
There is nothing more upsetting than getting off of a plane coming home from where you were, yeah, literally the biggest snowflakes I've ever seen. And when you get off the plane, it feels like you were walking into someone's mouth.
I was gonna say that that heat blast of humidity getting back in Charlotte probably hit you like a ton of bricks, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we flew from Santiago, Chile to New York first, and even in New York, it was like, man, you get off the plane to walk from just the gangway back into the airport proper, and it felt like that gangway felt like an oven. I mean, it was so friggin' hot. Uh, I would like to make enough money to just follow winter and fall around the world wherever it happens to be.
Well, until you get to that point, you're going to be stuck in this state of North Carolina where it gets unbearably hot in the summer months. And the summer is, as we've talked about these past couple weeks, we're in the dog days right now. Obviously, we're waiting for football season to get here 51 days until South Carolina kicks things off against Old Dominion on August 31st. So we're really living and dying by what's happening in media days. Big 12 getting things started this week out there in Las Vegas, which I do think is, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it's ironic. Big 12. Not yet, Dave. Hold that for a little bit later. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But, anyway, I think it's, maybe intentional, but ironic that the Big 12 is holding their media days at the site of the last Pac-12 game
Oh,
between Oregon and
interesting.
Washington, where they played at Allegiant Stadium. I don't know if that was done on purpose, but it is kinda like a wink, nod to like, "Hey, we're taking the ashes of what used to be this conference."
Yeah.
By the way, I love that the Pac-12 is doing this, like, after hours, after at the bar media day because 'cause they're like,
Yeah.
we're kind of a conference, we're kinda not, come here,
It's
ask questions."
it's weird, right? Because isn't the Mountain West also doing, if not like formal media days, they're doing like a precursor to media days. I've seen the Boise State football team
Yeah.
doing wacky stuff up and down the strip to sort of promote themselves. I
Yeah.
guess they must be in media days because their media poll came out yesterday.
They're doing a media days at some of the hotels in Vegas. They were, saw one of the kids at Boise State was, like, at the Bellagio answering questions. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Alright, I guess
their
we're really."
kicker was at the Circa Casino, which is the one that has a sports book in the pool, and
Yeah.
he was kicking 65-yard field goals over the pool.
We're really leaning into this sports gambling thing now, aren't we?
Well, obviously, yesterday, the big story at Big 12 Media Days. Look, you want to say it's Deion Sanders, but really, I think it was everything around Colorado.
Sure.
There was a comment that Coach Prime made in his media availability. And to be fair to him, he was responding to a question about the way success or failure at Colorado is judged, not just by him, but by people that follow the program. And Deion Sanders was pretty blunt in saying, yeah, my success is different, is judged differently than others are.
Yes.
I'm judged on a different scale. My wins are totally different than your wins. Your wins, you just judge in football. That's why I have to start out and give you education and academics and so forth. I have to give you those things so you understand there's a greater scope. I can't win 9 games and our GPA suffers. Our GPA can't be high, but we lose another 8 games. We can't not go and grab high school players and you got a bunch of guys in the portal, out of the portal that's getting incarcerated. My wins are different. We have to win in every area. That's the way we're judged. And I'm cool with that because we come a little different. So the expectation is greater. But it's not just football. It's been like that all my life.
I don't think he's wrong. Like I think, look, it is in part what he has courted for sure, but also the cult of media around Coach Prime, around Colorado. Remember all the schools about Colorado becoming Black America's college football team? Like,
Right.
Black people in South Carolina don't care as much about the Gamecocks as white people do. Like all these tone
Sure.
deaf things by people that don't follow college football or are here specifically for the Dion phenomena as opposed to the games. that makes the people that have been here for years feel a certain way about Deion. He is measured differently. I don't know that that's a bad thing, though.
He is, and my favorite college football podcaster, Josh Pate, calls it the Deion tax, where you have the people that are the drive-by casuals of college football now more invested because of what Deion's doing out there at Colorado. But I agree with you, and I get what Deion's saying there, that he is under a microscope. And yes, some of that is self-inflicted because he is such a brash personality. But at the same time, yeah, they went 4-8 last year, which is what
Right.
people are quick to jump to when they talk about, Colorado's success in year number one. That was still overachieving. They weren't expected
Yeah.
to win 2 games a season ago, and they doubled that. Now, yes, some of those losses they had were laughably bad, like against Oregon, but still, that was a program he was completely rebuilding. And my really interesting thing to me is, and look, I don't know how long Deion's going to hang out there at Colorado. Maybe he follows his son to the NFL. Maybe he hangs out there for a few more years before taking a different job. Like, what's the program going to be like after he leaves it? Did he do enough to build that program into a brand that even when he's gone, we're still talking about Colorado football? Because let's face it, they've been irrelevant for the past couple of decades. Their entire tenure in the Pac-12 was completely forgettable until he comes in there and starts bringing media attention to them. So, the scope of what Deion's going to be able to do out there in Boulder is still yet to be written. Again, he's only been out there for 1 year, but yeah, we hold him under a microscope, and rightfully so, considering how brash of a personality he is. But yeah, his wins are definitely going to be judged differently than most coaches.
All right, I have 2 questions based off of what you just said there.
Sure.
I want to start with the idea of win being different for him. I don't think he's alone in that category of being judged more harshly. I think that given the way that the people with money that are still around, no longer play for, but are still around the University of Miami talk, I think that Mario Cristobal is judged very differently. I think Kalen DeBoer is good. I mean, like, how could he not be judged differently, taking over for the best head coach in the history of this sport? I think at this point, and we'll get into this more a little bit later, but I think at this point, we've seen this. We saw this play out last year. Dabo Swinney has gotten Clemson to a point that he's judged differently. It's not good enough just to be a contender for the ACC there anymore.
Yeah, I think it is either A, you're at a program where that is the expectation based on what you've done in the past, or you're the coach that invokes that kind of expectation based on what you either accomplished in the past or in Deion's case, where you have this outlandish personality that you're constantly in people's face where they're going to say, okay, we'll go out there and prove something to us.
Yeah, for sure. All right, here's the other thing I wanted to ask you. And before I do, I want to play you a clip from his son, Shedeur Sanders, who was part of a media scrum after Deion's availability. And he was asked what he thought about what his dad said about both Deion and Colorado being judged in a different way from other teams in the Big 12.
I remember first media day when I was in HBCU, I said, well, we won't lose a game. I'm undefeated in the SWAC, so I already know what the expectation comes with. I know where everybody's Super Bowl, so I'm really just I always stay level-headed, stay grounded, because I would never want to be that guy, look back, and not being able to take advantage of the moment that we have right now.
All right, he was just on social media last week complaining about his $400,000 car getting a parking ticket. Yep. So let's put the I stay grounded to the side for a minute, right?
Sure.
Is the idea that little Colorado in Boulder, where more people are worried about microbrews than they are about the score of the game, capable of being everybody's Super Bowl, is that actually good? Not just for Deion, not just for the players, but that to me seems like that's good for Colorado. Like, you cannot tell me, you mentioned the Oregon game, and yeah, they got their doors blown off in that game. But part of the reason they got their doors blown off is that Oregon treated that game like it mattered. Colorado State treated that game like it mattered. That has not been the case in Boulder since 1990 when they split a national championship.
Yeah, I think maybe Super Bowl is probably not the right way to describe that, but what he said there, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier on today, reacting to that clip, that it is and yes, that's Deion's son, so he has his own bit of, swagger to him and brashness to him himself, but that's what the entire team believes. They believe they are the best team in college football because Deion makes them believe that. And going back to that Oregon game, the selling point of that game and Dan Lanning's, pregame locker room speech that got out and everybody was talking about was they just wanted to shut him up. And it
Yeah.
wasn't from the standpoint of, hey, we think this is the best team in college football. We want to go out there and beat them. It's like this team is talking nothing but trash going into this game. We want to go out there and show them why they're not as good as they think they are. So
right. They don't know what the best team in college football looks like.
exactly. So maybe it's not a Super Bowl standpoint, but it is going to be a big game on everybody's schedule just from the polarization of what Colorado has become.
Yeah, I mean, at some point they're going to have to win some of these games, right? Imagine if it's Shane Beamer talking like this, and South Carolina goes out again, does what they did last year. Like, you're not going to tolerate that as a Gamecocks fan. Your patience is going to be very short. I just think that the amount of interest, before that Colorado State game day is there. The Rock is on the sideline. Members of Migos are on the sideline. There is a level of excitement to a school out west where that had basically died, and that is what the sport needs right now. It's why I don't have a lot of patience for people that don't like Deion on the basis of being Deion. Whether you want to believe it or not, Deion being Deion is good for the sport as a whole.
Listen, I loved Mike Leach. I love Mike Gundy, as controversial as he may be. I love a coach that can be a character and inject some personality into what has become a little bit drab at times, with coaches being very plain and coach speaking in college football.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know if you read that interview that Jonathan Mingo did with The Athletic, where, he's basically talking about how the Panthers receiving core has been remade. But
Sure.
I remember telling my partner Lauren on the This Team Is Killing Us podcast, aside from what he said about the team, like, you can tell this is an SEC dude that has been going through media training for multiple years, because this is a boring ass read.
Right. Yeah. It's a way of saying nothing with saying everything with saying nothing at the same time. A word salad of sorts to fill the quote, but not really give away too much.
Yeah, 100%. I want to circle back on what it is I said about Shane Beamer. Like, how much longer are you going to tolerate the rosiness, that everything is good here? This is the environment we want to be in if they put up another season like last year. I think there is something else that could make a season that doesn't end exactly to the level you want it to feel better than it actually was. We will get into that next. That's Tyler Head. I'm Demetri Ravanis. You are listening to The Game and the Game Sports Radio Network.
Let's see. I hope you don't mind that we're live streaming. Is that cool?
No, not at all. I love that we're live streaming.
Okay, just making sure.
Sorry, I got to pull up Carolina's schedule so I actually know what it is.
No, it's all good.
In the South Carolina business, AAA Heating and Air is your year-round ally against the changing weather. Start with a free replacement engine. They set the tone for quality and affordability. Let their expert team ensure your home is always an oasis of comfort, and with guaranteed financing, this luxury is more accessible than ever with their new special, 12 months of no payments or interest in 2024. What's more, their 15-year parts and labor warranty speaks volumes of their trust in their service and products. They're in it for the long haul, just like their warranties. AAA Heating and Air didn't just install my system. They will install yours and give you the peace of mind with their incredible warranty and easy financing options. Don't just take my word for it. Head over to their website for an instant quote and see the difference for yourself. AAA Heating and Air, where quality meets commitment and your comfort is their legacy. AAA Heating and Air today. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
AAA Air, when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
Save big during Hand and Stone's Christmas in July gift card sale. Gift cards for a 1-hour massage or facial start at only $69.95. Discover relaxation at any of their 3 locations or handandstone.com. Don't miss out on this limited time offer to indulge yourself or someone special.
The summer solstice, when the ho-hum of the everyday is replaced by an overwhelming sense of freedom.
Dave, did you get the rundown that he emailed?
Oh, I don't think I said it, Dave. I'll do it right now.
Is your time. And Love Chevy is
I can send it to you.
incredible summer savings on the entire lineup of awards.
I just took care of it.
Okay. He just sent it to you. It's got all the cuts, and we're going to use them.
Fully equipped for your next event. Prices of the year, the best prices anywhere, in fact. Love guarantees it. The others still saying anything to lure you in and let you down. The same old gimmicks and ridiculous add-ons. Love is different. Over 6 decades of honesty and integrity, and a long-standing belief that car buying.
Can you hear the commercials through my microphone?
No, I mean, yeah, I can hear what's playing ambiently in the room. I can't hear them like they're on the radio to me.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure you can at least hear it somewhat, so you're not sitting there inside.
And by the way, if you wanna bring us in and let me take us out, that might that might be
cool.
a better way to do it since you're actually watching Dave's cues and everything.
Yeah, that's cool.
And providing exceptional customer experience. Our appliance division offers in-house consultation. We have an in-house installation and warranty division. Our staff has nearly 70 years experience. Come see us at 1331 Gasson Street in the heart of Vista.
You already know that Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union offers truly free checking and great rates on auto loans, but did you know they do for second mortgage? Equity line of credit.
Okay. He said it says access denied when he's trying to get into it.
Really?
Community finance.
Oh. Do you have Terry's email? Can you share it to him?
Yeah. The Gmail address or his Cumulus address?
Yeah, the Gmail.
Okay.
Apply for your mortgage today.
Oh, Terrence Ledford.
Stopping by any of their
All right, just done it.
Lost the Midlands. Palmetto Citizens, proudly serving this community since 1936. Equal housing lender, NMLS ID number 449962. Approval based on credit worthiness.
Hit us up on the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. Your home of the Gamecocks in Columbia, 107.5 The Game. Also heard on 100.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Dimitri Raventos hanging out with you on this Thursday. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. And yes, because Dimitri is up at home in North Carolina, you can indeed hear us talking during commercial breaks. It's a little peek behind the curtain, like we're the Wizard of Oz or something. So if you want exclusive behind-the-scenes content of today's halftime show, come watch us on the live stream. I promise we're not going to say anything offensive.
I do not, but I will do my best to abide by game protocols, so to speak. Tyler, are you a gambling man at all?
I have dabbled in things like was it God, I think FanDuel, like during COVID.
Okay, like the old daily fantasy kind of stuff?
Yeah, like the
Okay.
the dollar bets kind of things. I've never really, because I was in a state where you could legally do that, and I'm not in
Right.
one now. But I've never really committed to it necessarily. Now, if South Carolina were to adopt sports gambling, I think I would lean into it a little bit more. But it's not something I've committed to a lot in my life.
Well, up here in North Carolina, we are all in on sports gambling. And look, I'm not going to name names. Some of us found ways to do it before we were all in legally here in North Carolina.
I'm not denying that happens.
Yeah. Do you know what Vegas sort of uniformly says the win total for the Gamecocks is this year?
Yeah, it about matches what the FPI on ESPN says, right around 5 to 6. Which,
Yep.
Looking at Carolina's schedule, I understand.
Yeah. For people that don't know, the over-under number, which is, the Vegas gives you a number and you bet, will the team have more or less wins than this number? Across the board, whatever casino you look at, it's 5.5 for the Gamecocks. And for the most part, I went and double-checked this last night. For the most part, the plus money is on unders. So Vegas tends to look at South Carolina as a 5 or 6 win team, leaning more towards 6 than 5. I think another losing season here would be a real disappointment, particularly coming off of the first two seasons that Shane put together in Columbia, but also, Carolina's not alone in this. So understand that I'm not pointing fingers at Gamecocks fans when I say this. There is a class of SEC schools that really wonder what their reality is going to be in an expanded SEC when the expansion is two teams that they have seen in their lifetimes win and play for multiple national championships, right?
Yeah,
Go ahead. No, please, Tyler, go ahead.
No, I was going to say absolutely. Where Carolina has, been a program that, and you had the couple of 10-win plus seasons with Spurrier back in the day, but it's always been a program that's kind of floated around the middle of the SEC. And when you bring in two programs in Texas and Oklahoma that automatically take a step ahead of you, that just knocks you further down the pecking order. Where again, we've talked about this. Coach Beamer's not on the hot seat going into this year. Now, yes, if they go 0-12 and lose every single game, then sure, we can have a conversation of maybe need to move on. But I don't think he's at risk of losing his job necessarily. But Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports put out his list yesterday of the pressure ratings on all these coaches across FBS football. And he had Shane Beamer in the category of 3, which is pressure is mounting. So again, you're potentially setting yourself up to be on the hot seat next year if this year doesn't go right. But you do have room to work a little bit this year without thinking, oh my God, if we don't win 8 games, I'm going to lose my job this year or something.
Yeah, for sure. I do think that the reason that there is some consternation about what Carolina is in the new SEC, and keep in mind, this doesn't have to do, when I say this, I'm not grouping teams that based on their record last year. I think Tennessee is in this group of wondering exactly what they are in the new SEC. I think that, people look at Shane has had a 9-win season. Will Muschamp had a 9-win season. Like, it is possible to do that here. It may not be the norm, but there is enough talent in the area. It is an attractive enough place to bring not just recruits, but transfers as well, that a coach should be able to put together an 8 or 9-win season every 3 years, let's say. That's not asking too much. So if Vegas thinks that 8 or 9 is kind of out of the question, we're talking more 5 or 6 wins for this team this season. I wonder, is every 5-7 or 6-6 record, are they built the same? Or if one of those wins was somebody specific on this roster, would you feel like there is still progress being made?
If you told me South Carolina went 5-7 and they beat any team between Ole Miss, Alabama, or Oklahoma, which is their entire month of October, I think that would be like, hey, I know the whole year didn't go great, but I don't want to equate it to like when Muschamp beat Georgia back in 2019, because that year as a whole was very rough, and again, ended up getting fired the next year. But there's at least that silver lining of, hey, we have the capability on a really good day to go out there and still beat a really good team.
Yeah, I agree. I look at this schedule, and I think you can go ahead and put 4-2 down in Penn. Like, I can't envision them losing to Old Dominion, Akron, Wofford, or Vanderbilt, and I can't picture them beating Ole Miss or Alabama.
Sure.
Everything else is a toss-up, I think. I don't expect that they will go to Norman and win, but I don't think it's out of the question. Count me as somebody that's not totally sold on the next evolution of LSU, and I'm not totally sold on Missouri. They're going to have a great offense. I don't know who they're stopping. I think that if by the end of the season you are looking at a 10-2, 9-3 Missouri team, and one of those losses is South Carolina, Shane Beamer should be patting himself on the back for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Carolina's not going to be favored in most of those games, again, going back to how Vegas kind of views them there. But like you said, Old Dominion, Akron, Wofford, those are teams that South Carolina should beat Vanderbilt. So there's 4 wins that you can pretty confidently say put on the board. We've talked about this a lot. That week 2 game against Kentucky is probably the most important game on the entire schedule, because you have 2 programs that are pretty similar to each other. And I always like to say that Carolina fans look at Kentucky the same way Kentucky fans look at South Carolina. Hey, we should beat that team every single year, and Carolina's gotten the better of them past couple of years. So if you go up there and you beat Kentucky on the road in Lexington week number 2, you come back home to take on LSU, who again is retooling in a lot of ways after losing a ton of talent to the draft this past year, in addition to trying to rebuild some semblance of defense, which is going to feature no guys on the defensive line, it seems like, based on how their offseason has gone so far, where you have a little bit of confidence going into that game that, hey, maybe you can take down a team like LSU, which, again, is a big brand. Brian Kelly's a great coach, but they're not as strong as they've been in years past.
They aren't even committed at LSU to fixing their number one defensive problem, which is finding a actual position for Harold Perkins and letting him cook in the middle of that linebacking core, as opposed to moving him all over the place like they did last year.
Have you ever seen that that meme of, I think it's the Bugatti or the Lamborghini parked next to the trailer, and it's like, this is so and so on this team? That's Harold Perkins on that defense. Great player. He's got a huge future at the next level, but there's just nothing around him.
I want to circle back to that Kentucky game, because we're sitting here talking about if this is a 5-win team, which win actually makes that 5-7 feel a whole lot better. To me, if this team finds a path to 8-4, 9-3, but one of those losses is Kentucky, I still feel like there's some real problems here, because it tells me that South Carolina, and this is not a Shane thing, this predates Shane, they kind of sometimes have trouble getting into the flow of a season. And also, I don't know, everybody listening, whatever city it is you're listing in, if you are not an all-in SEC guy, you may not realize that there is some real, the vibe's kind of sour in Lexington right now, right? Nobody's going to tell you Mark Stoops isn't a good coach, but the athletic department and Mark might be done with each other. Right, there's a reason that Mark Stoops was announced as becoming the Texas A&M head coach before he suddenly wasn't. So I think that Kentucky, even though I can see Kentucky winning that game, I think that is one that if you are Shane, if you are Lenora Sellers, if you are anybody associated with Gamecock football, that is one you want to win to get the fans on your side.
My one thing that, like you said, if you win 8 or 9 games and still lost to Kentucky, my one caveat to that is it's the second week of the season, and you could have a case of, okay, the team got better as the year went along, because Carolina's retooling in a lot of ways, replacing a lot of people and bringing a lot of transfers. Maybe you just didn't have it clicking in week number 2, and you eventually got there as season went along. That might be a little more forgivable if that ends up being the case with this team.
I mean, I guess so. I think that very excuse, though, is something Carolina fans are a little bit sick of. I mean, look, you talk to them more often than I do now. I'm sort of giving you the historic view of it. So, look, if I'm wrong, if Tyler's right that you can forgive a slow start, like, let us know, whether it's on the Love Chevy phone lines or the Firehouse sub text line, 803-404-6100. Did you watch any of that soccer game in Charlotte last night?
I caught a little bit of it. It ended up being more entertaining afterwards, it seemed like, than it did the actual game. But a lot to dive into with that.
Dude, when you look at Bank of America Stadium for an international soccer game versus for a Panthers football game, we may have to ask some hard questions about our neighbors to the north. We'll do that next on 107.5 The Game and on the Game Sports Network.
Media Days, the first major media appearance for 2 new members of the SEC. Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. It's great to be joining the SEC.
Oh, who else going to Media Days for you?
Jay, Terry, and Elijah.
Oh, sure.
So I'll be back here running the ship, recording every single press conference and trying to piece it all together as the week goes along. It was fun last year.
Yeah. You were in studio last year, right?
I was in studio last year, yes.
Yeah, this week last year I did the full week with you.
That's right. And there was one point in time where we had somebody playing on, or I was recording somebody's presser through the computer in there, through the board. We were doing somebody else live out there, and then Heath was recording an interview with somebody on one of our other I had like 4 things going on at once. It was a lot. I pride myself on being a multitasker.
Well, you are very good at it. I was very impressed with watching you do that just through the glass last time I was down there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, everything after that's light work.
875-MENS and learn more online at the Men's Clinic SC.
Can we, rather than throw to this audio, can we just come back with this audio?
Yeah, I can do that.
Landscape and Lawns, treat your lawn. Hey, this is Paul Romanstein, proud owner of Midlands Landscape and Lawns. Let us take care of those weeds in the grass. Let us get that grass.
Dave, can we get the Carboni coming back in the bumper, please?
So you want a green plush lawn? Let the pros take care of it. Somebody who's local, somebody that's dependable, and somebody that cares. That's Midlands Landscape and Lawns. You can find us at hateweeds.com. Hateweeds.com.
Are you searching for the secret to losing weight and getting healthy? Are you looking for a simple and sustainable approach without dangerous drugs, injections, or surgery? Hi, this is Dr. Mark Bentley with Columbia Secret for Weight Loss, and we know the secret to losing up to 1 pound of fat every day naturally without counting points or calories, no exercising, and no prepackaged meals. Our program is safe with no drugs.
Did you know that the New York NYC FC and MLS, do you know they play in Yankee Stadium?
Did not know that.
I didn't either. I'm just looking up MLS attendance because I know Charlotte's is pretty high, but I wanted to get the exact figure here. And their teams are playing all kinds of stadiums. I didn't realize.
And it's helped me create a sustainable
News to me.
lifestyle that's going to help me live longer and live happier. Many patients lose to 20 to 30 pounds in about a month or two. That's about a half a pound or a pound a day. For your free private weight loss consultation, call 803-824-4210 or online at columbiasecretforweightloss.com.
Hey guys, Jay Phillips here for Integrated Media. You know they've been the Midlands leader in home theater for the past 2 decades for installation of amazing 4K televisions and surround sound systems to Wi-Fi that works everywhere. No one else compares to their customer service and quality. And now the guys at Integrated Media have expanded their brand to provide a state-of-the-art golf simulator experience next to their offices in Chapin. Pro Swing is what it's called. The golf simulators by Golf Zone have automatic tees. You don't have to bend over to set up your
What was that?
amazing swing plate moving up to 24 different directions for
Yeah, no problem.
experience. The playing surface has simulated greenside and fairway bunkers, even 2 different cuts of rough to bring a real life experience inside with 68 degrees of air conditioning every day. One golfer can play 18 holes in about an hour, 2 in 2, with selections of non-alcoholic drinks, domestic and craft beer. It's fun for the entire family. To book a tee time or to get golf lesson packages, visit ProSwingColumbia.com or call 803-948-8327 to have a blast with Pro Swing and Integrated Media.
Powered by Integrated Media, Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd.
Do you want to come out of this audio clip just saying what's going on or what that was, kind of thing?
It's kickoff time, and the lead podcast.
You should be able to hear the audio clips, right? You can hear them?
I mean, I've been able to hear them all so far. I just wanted to kind of keep it consistent.
Yeah, just make sure.
Expert analysis from all 32 teams, plus all of your favorite college teams. The true junior that we're talking about, sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone. The running was good. His size is unbelievable. Just search the lead at BLEAV podcast wherever you listen.
What you're talking.
All right, guys, I'm not biased, I promise, but I'm being dressed up by the Colombian fans out here right now. We did find some Uruguay fans. I guess I am. You're Colombia now. 2-1. Guys, we'll send it back to you. More on this massive match tonight at 5:30.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Dimitri hanging out with you on this Thursday. That was Nick Carboni of WCNC Charlotte. Outside of last night's Copa America match, being swarmed by fans, happy fans. They were giving them hats. They were putting stuff on them. It was a very fun atmosphere before the game, at least a fun atmosphere that I don't think Bank of America Stadium is seen, at least for a professional sports team, in quite a while.
Yeah, for Panthers fans, I think we were a little bit jealous because, first of all, if you didn't watch the Copa game last night between Colombia and Uruguay, I don't think you had to be a soccer fan. There was just a whole lot of tension in the air in that game. It was a lot of fun. Colombia ends up winning 1-0. Maybe you saw the video that there was a fight in the stands between the Uruguay soccer team and some Colombia fans that Uruguay says those fans started bothering the Uruguay's players' families after the game, and that's what started that. But the point is, Tyler, that Charlotte really put on last night. Charlotte showed you they are capable of handling crowds coming from all over and giving them a first-class sports experience.
It was one of those kind of things you almost forgot where the game was being played because you're
Yeah.
just not used to seeing something like that. And again, we're not trying to dig on the Panthers too much here, but you just don't see that on a Sunday at Bank of America Stadium. And there is a difference in culture between NFL fans and obviously international soccer fans that does bring that extra level of excitement. But it definitely looked like almost like a world showcase type of thing with what you were seeing last night.
I mean, look, let's take the Panthers out of it for a second, right? How many years has Carolina opened in Bank of America Stadium, whether it's against UNC, NC State? I think they played East Carolina there one year, a few years back. The environment is never like that. And when you see what we saw last night, and you add to that what a Charlotte FC game looks like for a regular season MLS contest, dude, is Charlotte just not a football town? Is it a football town? Are they a soccer town and just don't want to admit it?
You know, it's funny. We had the same conversations in Atlanta when Atlanta United came about because they pack out Mercedes-Benz Stadium and you have the footy mob and all those people that just, have that great, energy during those games. Then you go to a Falcons game and it's like being inside of a mausoleum. People could care less what's going out there and it's, half full. So I think it's just the environment of soccer that's a little bit more inviting to that type of fan energy. And I don't know, because MLS is still very new down here. When you talk about Atlanta, you talk about Charlotte, places like that, where I think there's this element of, I guess the fans haven't been disappointed enough quite yet to stop caring. Maybe that's part of it too.
You were in Atlanta. They came in 15?
17 was their first
17.
year.
And then by 18, they won the league championship, right? I mean, there was no break to them being winners. I'm glad you brought up Atlanta United because if you look at the 2023 season, Charlotte FC is the number 2 team in attendance. They average around 36,000 people per game. The only team ahead of them is Atlanta United. Sure. And by the way, at number 4 is Nashville. Like the MLS and soccer in general has really taken hold in the South. And it's interesting to me because if you look at MLS attendance standings, here are the bottom 3. Both New York teams. You would say that's a pretty internationally diverse place that you should have a lot more soccer fans there, right?
Right.
And Houston, which has a pretty large Mexican population. You would think there would be people going to games there. So whether or not Charlotte is a soccer town, it very much is. Let's quit pretending it's not. Sure. Let's put that to the side for a second. You saw that stadium last night. Forget the fights, anything like that. You heard the roar.
Yeah.
In the crowd last night. My son and I have been glued to Copa America this whole time. So we were watching it last night. To me, as a Panthers fan, as a North Carolinian, it was just a reminder of the missed opportunity with the stadium renovations because Charlotte is fully capable of hosting a Super Bowl. It is fully capable of hosting a Final Four or a college football national championship game, and choosing not to put even a retractable roof on the stadium takes that away from not just Charlotte, but all of us that are driving distance from Charlotte to experiencing those moments.
Well, at least, the Panthers aren't going to go anywhere for the next 20 years. So there's that.
Yeah, that's the sort of threat they added to the end of it. And by the way, this team is yours forever.
I think that's scarier than anything.
Yeah, it was a really great environment last night. Charlotte, obviously, we have watched it from this side of the state border, has just exploded in the last 30 years in terms of what is popular there. But given the way that the NCAA and the NFL govern their biggest events, ironically, not putting a roof on the stadium has kind of put a roof on just how big the events are going to be that come to that town. I think it's wonderful that Charlotte gets 2 pretty significant Copa America games. They had the semifinal last night. They'll have the 3rd place match on Saturday. But hey, Charlotte's not part of the 2026 World Cup, right? Yes. Charlotte is not going to be in the conversation for any major postseason football games. And I think sort of, if you're not going to do a full reset and build a brand new stadium, at least not doing everything necessary to be a modern, forget stadium, but event space really is when you see moments like last night, you see what an opportunity the city missed.
Yeah, you take yourself off the list of potentially hosting a Super Bowl. They're not going to want to play a national championship in January in an outdoor stadium in a place like Charlotte where the weather could be iffy. You're not going to get a Final Four there or anything like that. Like, you are potentially hurting yourself in a lot of different ways. And who knows how much money that could do for the city, being able to host those kind of events. Obviously, it wouldn't be every single year, but say you get all three of those events over the course of a 12-year cycle, that is still pretty significant for the city that, unfortunately, without having a roof, like, again, we're seeing push for, in Nashville with stadium upgrades going out there at Nissan Stadium, that opens up the door for them to host all those things and countless others in a city that's also booming like Nashville's been.
Yeah, and Nashville has been really outspoken about this is why we are doing this. We want the Final Four. We want the Super Bowl. We are capable of hosting these events. Even Jacksonville, they're getting a roof on their stadium. The city just approved that the other day, and I think we have seen, look, if you remember I think most people remember the Falcons, or excuse me, the Super Bowl the year before because of the Janet Jackson nip slip, but the Patriots Eagles Super Bowl in Jacksonville, do you remember the stories coming out about how ill prepared that city was for a big event like this? That like some pretty significant Super Bowl parties were being held at Cracker Barrels because there just weren't event spaces there the way there are in cities like a Charlotte. Like, dude, last night was so disappointing. The game was great. The environment was great. And that's not going to come back to that town, to that stadium very often in the future.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem that way. And like you said, even college football, which it did, again, has more of a rowdy atmosphere than what an NFL game does. Even that, the Duke's Mayo Bowl and even the kickoff games they have up there just doesn't quite match what you would see from an international soccer crowd, like last night.
Yeah, now keep in mind, the last time that Carolina played in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, they got shut out by you can't say a bad Virginia team because it has gotten so much worse, but it was not a good Virginia team, right? But the environment was dead. And I'm not entirely positive that the NC State crowd is going to make Charlotte a very tough place for Tennessee when they play in week 1. But let's keep the conversation about soccer going in sort of a different way, because you saw yesterday that Team USA, the U.S. men's national team, made a change at coach. And it got me thinking not just about U.S. soccer, Tyler, but also as we head into the Olympics and what we have seen around Olympic basketball. Coming from South America, where Copa America was everything, and Argentina shut down when Argentina played Chile, and we were there. I think Americans want something different out of their national teams. We'll talk about that with you. And if you want to weigh in, here's my question for you. What is more important to you? Is it your team or is it the national team in some of these competitions? Because as a Celtics fan, I have a very unpopular opinion about what I want from Team USA basketball at the Olympics. 803-404-6100 is the number. You're listening to 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
The Game Network in Columbia, 107.5 The Game. In Florence, 100.5 The Game. In Myrtle Beach, 100.3 The Game.
We good?
Yep, all good.
We'll come back with, if you'll ask Dave, if we can come back with the Berhalter audio.
Okay.
And we'll just roll from there.
All right.
Welcome in to the afternoon show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips.
Well, just go to iTunes or Google Play and download the Game app. Sure, you may no longer be with that person anymore.
And then the last segment of the hour, we got to hit our text of the hour as well. We can save that for the back end just in the last minute or so.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, just remind me, and I'll make sure we have room for it.
Okay.
Kawhi Leonard home, and it makes sense. Leonard got hurt during the playoffs. The third straight time his postseason has been cut short. Paying Clippers fans had a right to wonder, why was Kawhi over there anyway? Trust me, Team USA will be just fine without him. I'm Andrew Perloff.
Have they announced who's taking? Oh, Derek White is taking his place.
They say health is wealth, and I could not agree more.
Well, there you go.
That's why if you or somebody in your life is living
That makes
with
my point even better.
I'll tell you about Relief Factor. And I'm telling you, I can feel the difference. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that helps fight pain naturally. Naturally. Now that's a big deal. Developed by doctors. Relief Factor's unique formula of ingredients all work together to help support your body's response to
Can we get the Burkhalter audio on the bumper, please?
use or even eliminate your pain for good. Whether it's neck, back, joint, or muscle pain, if you're looking to feel better, live better, give Relief Factor a try. In 3 weeks, you will know if it's working because you'll feel it. For instance, I was sent Relief Factor to try, and I've been taking it every single day. I'll tell you what, I feel the difference every day. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4-RELIEF. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF. Save on your first order. Don't let pain tell you how to live. Fight back naturally with Relief Factor. These products and statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million of term insurance may only cost you about $200 a month. Call Term Provider. Speak with Big Lou at 800-345-2789. Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, or overweight, or have high
How many,
blood
off the top of your head, do you know how many Gamecocks are on the women's team?
Can't afford term life insurance.
The
women's basketball team at the Olympics? I know Asia Wilson.
That's a good question. Let me see.
Because the roster only has their current WNBA team, not a college.
Let's see here.
Work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-345-2789. 800-345-2789 or biglou.com. Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's
Jesus,
on them.
Diana Taurasi is 42. I mean, I'm 42, but like I just think of her as young.
Right. I think it is just Asia Wilson.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just didn't know if there was a name that I just didn't recognize on here.
Big Lou will find a term life policy for you even if you have type 2 diabetes, or overweight, or have high blood pressure. Term Provider has helped thousands of people like you who think they can't afford term life insurance. To buy $1 million of affordable term life for you, all you need to do is call Big Lou at 800-345-2789. Lou will make sure the scales are tipped in your favor. Call 800-345-2789. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-345-2789. 800-345-2789 or biglou.com. The Halftime Show, sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's time for Text of the Hour on the Firehouse Subs text line on the Halftime Show. On your home.
I think you would all join me in saying thank you to Greg Berhalter, and we wish him well, and I think he is going to go on and have a wonderful career. But I also think you would join me in saying that this was absolutely appropriate and fair for the moment. As I've said time and time again, Greg Berhalter has been given numerous bites at the apple and plenty of opportunity, and ultimately the failure here at the Copa America. And we did talk to Matt Crocker behind the scenes before we went on air, and he was very gracious and he was very honest about himself and about this decision, and really it came down to results.
Welcome back in. It's Halftime Show. Tyler Head and Dimitri along with you on this Thursday. That was Alexi Lalas on Fox talking about the Greg Berhalter firing for the U.S. men's national team after their poor showing in the Copa America. And a lot of people believe that this was done probably a couple years too late after what we saw out of the team this year.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Berhalter was the coach of the team at the World Cup. And at the World Cup, the Team USA in 2022 actually played pretty well. But in their final game, they just looked so incredibly outclassed. Berhalter gets fired. They bring in another coach for less than a year. U.S. Soccer determines that it was more internal politics and not performance, so they bring Berhalter back, and it's more of the same. And so it is absolutely time that he goes. Lawless went on to talk about what it is he expects from the next coach for Team USA Soccer. And for him, it's not so much about getting a name as it is about what that next coach can deliver, because whoever gets this job is likely going to be the coach of the team when it hosts the World Cup in 2026.
The search has obviously started now. They hope to get something done by September, and who knows, maybe even before. But whoever that person that comes in, I think is going to be the one that is going to lead this team into 2026, where it is important that we have somebody that enables us to be excited, that enables us to be inspired, that enables us to believe that this is a team that to believe in. And I think right now there are too many people that don't believe in it.
U.S. men's soccer is a lot of fun. Like, there's a lot of young stars. They play with a lot of speed. They just don't always deliver the results, and it can be frustrating if you're a fan. But Tyler, that quote made me think about the way we as Americans look at our national teams. And I don't mean like the Olympic team where like Simone Biles you look at as Simone Biles, right? You know, she's representing the USA, but when she's out there, she's Simone Biles.
Right.
I think that if you think about the 2022 World Cup, the 2023 World Baseball Classic, getting ready for the 2024 Olympics with Team USA men's and women's basketball, I don't know that we are ever going to have that feeling in the country again that even the Dream Team in 92 captured of not only do we expect to win, but we better go out there and show the world just how much better we are than they are.
Yeah, I think basketball is maybe the one sport that you still kind of feel that to a degree. But everything else, obviously, you want, as an American, you want to see them win gold. But I think there's more of this degree of at least looking competitive. You know what I mean? Like, at least make a case for yourself being one of the best teams in the world if you don't end up winning the whole thing, which again goes back to why people are so disappointed with the men's national team in Copa, because they just didn't look like they belonged out there. And again, we have the best resources. We have the best athletes in the entire world at so many different things. Why we can't compile together a group that's capable of playing good soccer is head scratching.
I mean, look, people have said this for years, right? That if America took its best athletes and started them in soccer, we really could put together one hell of a team for international competitions. And everybody points to Kobe Bryant, right? Because he was considered something of a soccer prodigy growing up, but he was even more of a basketball prodigy. Like, that's great. That's never going to happen, though, right? And I think what is weird is with basketball, you look at the team this year that is going to be representing the United States over in Paris, and it is the biggest of the big stars in the NBA. Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid just won the MVP this past year. You have a bunch of members of the Celtics that just won the NBA finals. And it's interesting that we expect that they should very easily win the gold medal. But I don't think we're going to feel the pride of them winning the gold medal as much as we are going to feel the frustration if they don't get it. And so here is my question to you, Tyler. Do you prefer when your team's player ends up on the national team? And I'll give you an example. I'm a huge Celtics fan. I have been since I was a little kid. So I think it's great that Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday are all on the national team. But if they get injured on the national team and are not ready and available for the Celtics next year, I'm going to be pissed that they were on this national team.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things you enjoy the fact they're getting the honor of getting to represent the country. You just watch it kind of on pins and needles, hoping that they don't end up getting hurt. Much like when, got the Major League Baseball All-Star game coming up next week. Like, hey, I'm glad so-and-so's on the team or whatever. Make sure he goes out there and is healthy and can come back for the second half of the season so we can continue to have him at his top shelf there. So I think it's kind of the same way where, again, the honor is great, but you just want to make sure they go out there and can get back to their day job at the end of the day being okay. But that'll wrap it up for hour number one here of the Extra Point. Really quick, want to get to our Firehouse Subs text of the hour. And Nameless Texter weighs in here and says, would a Clemson Carolina soccer game in Bank of America Stadium be something worth setting up as a fan going to? I don't know if you're going to sell it out, but it might be something neat to check out. Who knows?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see if Dave Tepper's on board.
Hour number two coming up, the halftime show here on the game. Sorry, I just realized you can't hear the music as we're wrapping up the hour.
No,
yeah,
good. Okay.
So
Thanks a lot.
at 54:50 is when it starts, and it's 30 seconds.
Okay.
Get ready to fun because Herndon Chevrolet, your hometown Chevy dealers, offering an amazing deal. Right now, get a whopping $20,000 off new Silverados. Yes, $20,000 off.
How long do we have before we come back? We're back at 02
We're right at the top of the hour.
at the top of the hour. Okay, I'll be right back.
All right. What do you mean?
You know how it's really, really, really low?
Mm-hmm.
And you can change it. You can go in all the settings and change it. Blow it up, change it, apply, and it just goes around 20%.
Jefferson,
That's weird.
your home team.
That's Jeffers McGill.
Do you remember your first Gamecock game? Who you were with and where did you sit? Where did you tailgate? What were you wearing? The idea that all those memories can come flooding back the moment you set foot on campus is real. So this year and every year, come to campus and catch a game. Whatever the game, whoever you're with, just catch a game. Get your tickets today and catch a game at any time for any sport. Online at GamecocksOnline.com.
Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union wants to reward you for saving more of your hard-earned money, and they can't think of a better way to do it than with more cash. When you participate in Palmetto Citizens Save to Win program, every time you make a savings deposit of just $25, you'll be entered into a monthly and quarterly prize drawing for a chance to win up to $5,000. All the money that piles up in your Save to Win account is yours to keep, along with the interest you earned, so there's never been a better time to get the ball rolling on your savings plan. With a Save to Win account, there's nothing to lose and everything to win. Open your 12-month Save to Win term certificate account and start saving today by visiting any of Palmetto Citizens' 14 branches across the Midlands, or go to palmettocitizens.org to learn more. Palmetto Citizens, proudly serving the Midlands since 1936. Account may be subject to penalty for early withdrawal. This credit union is federally insured by the NCUA.
Healthy Connections Medicaid members, did you know you need to renew your Medicaid coverage each year? You can complete your annual Medicaid eligibility review or check your status online at apply.scdhhs.gov. Healthy Connections Medicaid members can now create an ID.me account to easily stay up to date and report household changes. Visit apply.scdhhs.gov to learn more. And remember, submit your review when it's time to renew. This message is from Healthy Connections Medicaid and paid for by DHEC.
Self-care is so important, and the Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa's Christmas in July gift card sale is the perfect way to treat yourself or a loved one to some well-deserved relaxation. Whether it's a massage, facial, or other spa treatment, taking time for self-care can truly make a difference in one's overall health and happiness. For a limited time only, 1-hour massage and facial gift cards start at only $69.95. Discover relaxation at any of their 3 convenient locations across the Columbia area or handandstone.com to purchase online. Offer valid at participating locations for only a limited time.
Honey, would you take a seat? I have a confession to make.
What is it? What's wrong?
Well, I was out driving today and I saw some hookers on the side of the road. A bunch of huge, professional, beautiful looking hookers. So I did what I was supposed to do. I slowed down and moved over.
You slowed down for the hookers?
Well, yeah, it's the law. There was a whole fleet of Schroeder's towing trucks assisting with an accident. Wait, what did you think I was talking about?
Schroeder's towing reminds you to slow down and move over for all first responders.
Schroeder's Talent, the best and fastest hookers in town.
WNKT, Silver Columbia, the home of the national champion Gamecocks women's basketball team. Congrats, y'all. A Cumulus media station.
Halftime show, hour number 2. Tyler Head and Dimitri along with you on this Thursday. It is time for football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour, brought to you by our friends over at Atlantic Windows and Doors. And we are in the midst of what we love to call talking season, the season of list, however you want to phrase it, as we wait for college football and football in general to get here at the end of next month. And one point of conversation this time of year that is always evergreen is the topic of hot seat. Who is at risk of losing their job going into a given season? I mentioned the Dennis Dodd article a little bit earlier. He actually only had one coach that was listed in win or get fired mode, and that being Sam Pittman at Arkansas, which I thought was interesting. I thought a few more coaches could have made their way onto that list, but nevertheless, Uncle Sam out there in Fayetteville is definitely in danger of not finishing the season as Arkansas's head coach.
I think that common belief is that Billy Napier at Florida is probably on that list as well.
Sure.
I don't think Florida necessarily wants to fire Billy this quickly. And we'll get into this more a little later. I actually think Florida's going to be a lot better than people think they are this year. But we spend so much time talking about the hot seat, Tyler, that I wanted to bring up the idea of the cold seat.
Okay.
This was something that got brought up on the Shutdown Fullcast this week, which is a great college football podcast. And in fact, one of the hosts of that show, Ryan Nanny, will join us in about 15 minutes from right now to talk more about this. But Ryan's idea was, who are the coaches in the country that could go 4-8? And sure, their bosses wouldn't be happy, but you would not expect the team to immediately start the coaching search. And so rather than think about this across the entire country, let's just limit it to the SEC. Are there cold seats in the SEC this season?
Definitely so. I mean, the obvious one is Georgia, right?
Right.
The people in Athens would not be thrilled if Georgia went 4-8. So that's probably the bulletin board material Kirby's using.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody thinks we're going to go 4-8. Go out there and prove them wrong. But he would still be the coach in 2025, even if that happened, just given what he's already accomplished at Georgia. So that's definitely in the conversation for a cold seat. I really had to think about this because it's such a compelling question that it's not as easy of an answer as you think. I would probably say that Elko and Lebby are probably in that same area because they're coming in as first-year coaches.
Yeah, I really think the only first-year coach that we can have this conversation about is Kalen DeBoer. I think everyone else, you assume a cold seat for them. Certainly Lebby, where the expectations are low, but also Elko, because I think most of the Texas A&M, even the booster class, believes that they are coming out of such a messed up situation that he is going to need time.
Sure. The DeBoer thing makes sense, but it's man, you would have such an impatient fan base at that point in time, and I don't think they would pull the trigger and say, "All right, you got 1 year, now you're out of here." But it's just, I don't know. It's such a foreign concept to think of Alabama being that bad that I can't really put that into context. I guess is the best way to phrase it.
Let me put on my lunatic Alabama fan / alumni hat and tell you that if with what Nick Saban leaves behind, all you could do is 4 wins, you are not worthy of a second year on that job. I think DeBoer is doing something no one else in college football has done before. That is such a unique circumstance that he is the lone year one guy, I would say, doesn't have a cold seat. Kirby almost certainly does. The thing that is interesting to me is I look at someone like Josh Heupel at Tennessee. He has certainly done enough. Mark Stoops at Kentucky has certainly done enough that you would think the fan base would stand with them if this is a bump in the road on the way to a rebuild. But conference expansion changes the math a little bit. I think if you are let's use Carolina as an example. Vegas says they're a 5 to 6 win team. I think if they win 5 or 6 games, maybe you don't panic, right? But if they win less than that, it is okay for the fans to wonder if going forward in a new, bigger SEC, if Shane Bieber or the program in general is capable of meeting expectations.
I think that definitely throws a wrench into it because, again, for a lot of teams in the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma come into the league and are already past you. They are better programs than you, and you are fighting to claw your way back to wherever you were before because you're now at least 2 spots behind. So I do think that's a pretty interesting wrinkle to bring into it. And today's world of college sports in general, but specifically college football, with all the revenue that gets generated by it, and how impatient we've become, It used to be, and I get it, the transfer portal changes that a little bit. It used to be you had to give a coach at least like 4 years, right?
Yeah.
To get a
Coaches, this is something my coach told me one time. Coaches in general would not entertain a job offer that didn't come with a 6-year contract.
Yeah.
For that exact same reason. You've got to have the time.
You got to have the time to literally fill the roster with your guys to show what you're capable of and what your program can be with you at full control and everybody that's in there being guys that you want to be there. Obviously, that changed a little bit with the transfer portal now, where things a little bit quicker as far as a turnaround goes. And a guy like Dion can literally rebuild his entire roster each and every offseason. But still, like the fact that we're firing coaches after 2 and 3 years now is still kind of crazy to me. And talking about this from the SEC standpoint, we've seen in years past. I look at the Dan Mullen example a couple years ago where he had Florida in the SEC championship on the doorstep of maybe being in the conversation for the college football playoff, and a calendar year later, he's no longer the Florida head coach. It can change that fast. Now, yes, he was not doing what he needed to in the off-the-field stuff as far as recruiting and stuff that certainly was detrimental to his time there at Florida, but things can happen so fast where you can sit here in July and think somebody does have a safe job, and if things go sideways for them in a season, they might be fired at year's end because we know there is no buyout that is too big to pay these coaches anymore.
Yeah, look, we've seen it multiple times in the SEC. Gene Chizik, Ed Orgeron, less than 2 calendar years after hoisting the trophy, they are out on their ass, and that is where I come to next. I'm so glad you brought up the Dan Mullen example because that Florida team is kind of the perfect guinea pig for this. Now that the playoff has been expanded, can even a 9-3, 8-4 season allow a cold seat to a coach like a Lane Kiffin? I think Ole Miss fans would be disappointed if they're not at least a playoff team this season. Elijah Drinkwitz, I think that given overall what his track record is in Missouri, if he cannot, with that terrible schedule, get Missouri knocking at a playoff shot, I think you would wonder as a Mizzou fan, has this guy, did he absolutely need the perfect circumstance to do what he did in 23? Can we ever expect that again? I'm not saying you fire him for it, but certainly it's not there's no pressure on this guy situation.
Yeah, I think Drinkwitz has definitely built himself a little bit of a buffer given the season they had a year ago, which
is crazy because he is not a good coach.
And it's so funny because a year ago he had the contract extension going into last season after having multiple just 6-win years out there, and we were laughing about that. Like, well, what's the point in extending this guy when he's done nothing to show you how good of a coach he is? And again, last year was great, and give him credit for that. You know, Cody Schrader went out there and set the world on fire. You know, as a D2 running back, and obviously Luther Burden is probably coming back as the best wide receiver in all of college football. But if they regress back to being a 6 or 7 win team, I think we'd all just look at it and say, okay, that year was a flash in the pan, back to status quo for Missouri. And yeah, he's not going to get fired because of that this offseason, but maybe as you get into 25 and 26, then that conversation starts to change. But I do think he built himself a little bit of wiggle room based on last year.
I think there are certainly other conferences where that is true. I think that you could, like, all right, here's a really good example. I think that Mike Norvell could probably lose 6 games this year. Now, I don't think he will. I think that's impossible for this Florida State team, but he could win just 6 games this year. And I don't think Florida State fans are already starting the under the radar coaching search, but I don't think any other conference has as many national championship on one tier and on the next tier playoff contenders as the SEC does, and all of them think they belong. None of them think if things go right. All of them think that things are going to go right and we are going to be that team. I think it is really hard to get to a cold seat status in the SEC. You have to be a Kirby or a Nick Saban for that to happen.
Yeah, and especially like you mentioned with the expansion of the college football playoff, where we don't know what the exact criteria of making the playoff is. We know, obviously, if you win the SEC, you're going to be locked in as one of the top 4 seeds. But outside of that, you know, the debate's going to be all season long. Do they get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams in? For all we know, like, the possibilities are kind of endless until we see a litmus of what that's actually going to be. So that opens up, you know, even more of these teams saying, hey, we think if we go 8-4 by beating these teams, we should be able to get in the college football playoff, which again, just kind of, you know, you can run wild with that until you see something that tells you otherwise. So I agree with you. I think definitely, and again, the SEC is the best conference from top to bottom, depending on who you ask, and most people would agree, in all of college football. And that does set those expectations, no matter if you're at a Carolina, Mississippi State, or even a Vanderbilt, exceptionally high.
Yeah, I think that there are going to be people that look at their team, that look at their performance, and are going to judge it based on how it came about, right? We talked in the last hour about, is there a win that Carolina could get that would make 5-7 feel better than just 5-7 this season? I look at, and granted, the SEC is going to be very different next year than it was when he was coaching at Tennessee, but look at Butch Jones, right? Mm-hmm. Butch Jones put together back-to-back 9-4 seasons and did not have the grace to weather not a losing campaign. He was 4-6. Well, so it was very possible that team could have finished at 500 before Tennessee pulled the trigger. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is Butch Jones was largely perceived as kind of a clown. Yeah. I think that there are plenty of programs that accept they are not what Texas is right now, and may not be what Texas is for the foreseeable future, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But there are a bunch of teams that look at Oklahoma coming in and think Brett Venables' Oklahoma, the real Brett Venables' Oklahoma, is the 2022 team that went 6-7, not the team last year that went 10-2. And if they are dominated for a couple years by Oklahoma in those matchups, there could be some fan bases that are really unhappy that their team is not where they thought it was.
Yeah, we don't have a large enough sample size to really know what we have with them, and especially with the fact that, Dylan Gabriel's moved on, going to Oregon. You're bringing in Jackson Arnold as true redshirt freshman, I guess. Quarterback at this point in time, you're rebuilding your entire offensive line. Like, there's a lot of questions still to be answered about that team that, I think Brent Venables is a solid head coach. But again, we've only gotten 2 years of seeing him so far, and then transitioning into a new conference, how he's going to handle that. So we don't really know. But and I do think given the fact that he is going to his third year coming to a new conference, there's a bit of a grace period with somebody like that. And that scenario that maybe you wouldn't get otherwise.
A grace period for him. I don't know about a grace period for coaches that lose to him, though.
Probably not.
Or maybe they make a habit of losing to him, I guess would be a better way to say it.
Right.
The cold seat was a concept thrown out on the Shutdown Fullcast, a college football podcast. One of the hosts of that show is going to join us next. Ryan Nanni is just a few minutes away here on 107.5 The Game and The Game Sports Network.
The Game app and listen anywhere.
Hey, you didn't have that clip of Dabo reacting to the caller with the Tyler.
Oh man, we had it back then, but that was so long ago. There's no telling now.
It's not important. I was just wondering.
I have to delete files every single week just so we don't get backed up.
Yeah.
We were trying to get that integrated into one of our show titles on the 11 o'clock show that we do, but we never got around to it.
A buddy of mine who works in sports radio in Norman in Oklahoma City is named Tyler McComas. And I told him that his producer, when they introduced the host of the show, and it's Teddy Lehman and Tyler McComas, it's Teddy Lehman and Tyler McComas, and immediately the producer should always play that Tyler clip.
I had to convince people the next day that it wasn't me that called in.
I heard one podcast say, because they were asking,
I would call into Dabo's radio show and mess with him. Like, I would legitimately enjoy doing that.
I heard a podcast talking about wondering if it was a planted call for him to be able to kind of go off on the fan base like that. And I heard a podcast say that it was a real caller because the guy identified himself as having come back from serving overseas, and there's no way Dabo is going to work in disrespecting the troops to a bit.
That is a fair point, because I did see the conversation we had about it the day after was like, that was almost a little too perfect, because the fan base as a whole was getting a little testy with them, and that was kind of the way to remind them, like, hey, look what I've done for you in the past decade plus.
Yeah, it's interesting, and obviously we'll get into this more when we talk about this after Ryan. But I thought this about the Alabama job too. Like, I think the guy in that job can really raise the perception of how good a job actually is. Because if Clemson were open right now, you're probably getting a B-tier candidate, don't you think?
Probably so. And when you look at resources, you obviously look at, where they're at, obviously the conference that they're in. I do think that knocks them down a couple pegs based on what they're doing right now, which again is a testament to what Dabo's been able to do. Like,
yeah,
that's not something you should overlook, that they were a little old Clemson when he took over, and he's turned them into a team that's nationally relevant every single year. But yeah, if he decided to retire or went for another job or something like that, I don't know if, Urban Meyer's coming out of retirement to go to Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, hell, Urban Meyer coming out of retirement may be the best they could do, because that's not a great get right now. You know what I mean? I mean,
Sure.
I think the game is not what it was when Urban was at his very best, but it's a weird culture, man. Clemson fans have been emboldened on the internet in the last few years. That's for damn sure.
I'm sure Dabo or Urban would enjoy hanging out in the Greek village up there in Clemson more than anything else.
Just constantly like giving no regard to what else is around, constantly swimming in that big stupid lake.
Pretty much.
God, I hate him so much.
Then you can go teach a class about leadership and being a good person.
One of my favorite things about that is, yes, it seems like he got a golden parachute for the way he left coaching, but in order to enjoy that, he is stuck having to live in Columbus, Ohio. So it's not like he didn't get away. It's not like he got away completely scot-free.
Like you're not getting out of this one unscathed.
Enjoy Blue Jackets hockey for the rest of your life.
My aunt's actually a pretty Blue Jackets fan. She lives outside of Columbus.
Oh, sure. Look, my son loves the Carolina Hurricanes, and even living here in Raleigh, I'm like, really? The Raleigh team?
Yeah.
So weird.
You have the choice of any team that you want. Be a Golden Knights fan. I love the Kraken from their name alone.
Yeah. Although I'm worried it set off a negative trend where the Utah team is going to be named the Yetis. And I don't care for that one bit.
Right.
Although, to be fair, like, I'm not watching anyway. I don't like hockey.
Do you want to intro this since you
Sure.
know Ryan better than I do?
Sure. Just give me a point to let me know I'm on. Back on 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Radio Network. I'm Demetri Ravanis. He is Tyler Head. We were talking about the idea of the cold seat. It was a concept put forth by the folks on the Shutdown Fullcast, a great college football podcast that is sometimes about college football. One of the hosts of that show is Ryan Nanni. He joins us on the phone right now. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We are good. So here is sort of where we took your idea of the cold seat is between the expanded playoff and the expanded conference. I don't think fan bases in the SEC outside of Georgia are capable of giving their coach a cold seat sort of designation.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to, I think there's going to be an adjustment period because with the schedules changing, especially as we leave divisions, a lot of your usual benchmarks for, well, did we beat these teams? How do we, if you're Kentucky, you're saying, okay, did we beat Vanderbilt? Did we beat South Carolina? Did we beat Florida? Like, you don't have all those games on the schedule anymore. So you have to sort of reassess, like, where you have these useful emotional waypoints, and they don't exist anymore in the same way.
Yeah, I also think there is an element of there is this class of teams, and I don't think it matters how good or bad you were. Like, I would put Carolina in this group, but I would also put Tennessee in this group of a little bit worried about what their standing is in the new conference. And if they come out and disappoint this year, like, I think you set the threshold at 4-8. Forget that. Like, if they aren't capable of even meeting expectations, there's going to be a segment of the fan base wondering if this is the right guy to lead us into the new reality.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think what compounds that, obviously, is that rosters are much more fluid than they had been, even 4 or 5 years ago. And so now if you get that sort of internal doubt about, a coach or a group of coaches, you can see that with players leaving. And that's where I think administrations, I could see some administrations getting their hands forced by saying, well, we believe in this coach, but if the roster doesn't, kind of doesn't matter what we think.
So with this conversation, because every team goes into every season hoping they win every single game and obviously win the conference and make their way into the college football playoff. But now that we've expanded, we're abandoning divisions, you have 16 teams now. Do you feel like every team kind of has to set a line in the sand of, okay, we shouldn't really fall below this certain point, or we can start having a conversation about what our coach should be now?
Yeah, I think they're probably, I suspect good athletic departments probably were doing this all along, had a good sense of like, okay, this is what we think progress looks like for where we are in the development of our program at this point in time. It becomes a little more important probably to message that or to get it, to get a better public understanding of it. But I think there's probably still room to say like, okay, 7-5 works. Mostly though, you have to build it towards like, I don't think for most schools you can say that's the end of the sentence. It has to be 7-5 is fine for now, with the goal of next year it's 10 wins. The year after that, it's make the college football playoff. Like it I don't know if you can tread water at a lot of places the same way you might have been able to in past years.
I'm going to ask you about that exact thing here in just a second. Do want to let people know we are talking to Ryan Nanni of the Shutdown Fullcast. You can find new shows each and every Wednesday and see them live on stage in Raleigh at the Sports Podcast Festival on August 24th. All right, so the expanded playoff, treading water, the ability to be comfortable with a 10-2 team. Does the expanded playoff make a cold seat for a coach more likely or less likely, you think?
So I think short term, it makes it more likely because it's a box that's easier to check. Like we'll use Lane Kiffin as an example. Lane Kiffin has not taken Ole Miss to the SEC championship game. He has not taken them to the college football playoff. It seems like Ole Miss is the kind of team that in a 16-team playoff is in a much better place to contend for that spot. But the thing is, like, it'll be all well and good to make it, to get started. It will then very quickly matter how you do there. Like, you think about years past where Oklahoma was making the college football playoff, but wasn't necessarily doing anything, was getting run over by LSU, or was getting, run out of the arena by somebody else. And I think it will turn into a lot like what we see in the NFL. It's like, yes, making the playoff is great. It doesn't really matter if you're just getting knocked out right away. Like that starts to lose its luster. So the goalposts for a lot of programs, I think, are going to move within a couple of years.
Well, speaking of those goalposts for programs, and maybe we can exclude the likes of Vanderbilt or something like that, but for the most part, do you think that every SEC team looks at it and says, over the course of 6 to 8 years, we should find our way in the playoffs at least once based on the law of averages or something like that? Or is it kind of, still just looking at the top end teams and maybe a surprise every now and then?
I think if you're approaching it realistically, and I realize it now that that's the most nonsensical way I could frame it in the SEC, it has to be that combination for a lot of schools of, are we hitting development and the schedule at the right time? Because the schedules are going to be so varying year to year that you are going to have to say, like, okay, is this the year that we got lucky and we didn't play Georgia in the regular season, or we didn't play LSU in the regular season? We only had to worry about them in the conference championship if we made it there. But again, like, this is the conference that just added Texas and Oklahoma. And I think that's going to be the really tricky thing for a lot of teams to adjust to. Where if you were Arkansas, Arkansas has sort of knocked on. Arkansas's played an SEC championship. They've had seasons where it looked like, oh, maybe they're going to upset the power structure. Now you have two more blue bloods that you have to account for. So for like the SEC middle class, let's say, I understand that impulse, but I do think you probably have to look at it and say, not so much, are we making the playoffs every 6 to 8 years? And more so, are we in a position to like have the potential of doing that? It's a real thin differentiator, but I think it does matter.
He is Ryan Nanni from the Shutdown Fullcast. Ryan, before I let you go, as you know, next week is SEC Media Days, and I'm wondering if you know what significant anniversary we're celebrating next week.
Oh my gosh. I don't remember. No, which one is this the Phil Fulmer one? Are we coming up on that already?
This will be
which one is it then?
this will be 15 years since Clay Travis asked Tim Tebow if he is a virgin at SEC Media Days as a proud Florida alum. Tell me about your fond memories of that moment.
I mean, it was it's one of those times where you're just sort of like, do you really want the answer here? Like, however you feel about Tim Tebow, do you really want him to start talking about his sex life? Is that a thing that you're like, this is going to make me a happier person on either side of the equation? So it was well played in terms of getting attention for the question asker, but I remember thinking, like, there's a little bit of careful what you wish for here.
Right.
It didn't go that way, but you don't know going forward.
Well, knowing what we know about Clay Travis, I legitimately think he lives and dies knowing what happens behind the bedroom door when it comes to Tim Tebow.
It's important for us all to have that one compass point, and if that's it, so be it.
I know that was pre-iPhone, but like your idea of be careful what you ask for. If Tim Tebow had pulled out an iPhone and said, "Let me show you just how much not a virgin." He is Ryan Nanni. You can catch him on the Shutdown Fullcast. The live show is in Raleigh on August the 24th. Preownedairboats.com is the website to get tickets. Ryan, thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good stuff there. So we've been keeping the cold seat conversation focused on the SEC. Let's keep it in SEC territory, Tyler, but let's move the conversation from the Midlands to the upstate. You think Dabo still enjoys the cold seat? We'll get into that coming up next on 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
Couldn't miss an opportunity to take a dig at Clay Travis.
No, I do not blame you.
Essential supplies like pens, pencils, folders, and calculators at Hardee's locations like 120 Veterans Road in Columbia. We will be on site July 13th, 20th, and 27th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for drop-off. Let's make sure every student and teacher starts the school year off right. Together, we can make a difference in Richland 1 and Richland 2 school districts. Anyone who donates school supplies will receive one free 3-piece chicken tenders coupon from Hardee's. Limit one coupon per donating customer while supplies last. Hardee's and the Game, partnering to support our community.
Hey guys, Jay Phillips here for my good friends at Integrated Media, Columbia's leader in today's technology for your home and business. They've got TVs from Sony and Samsung, surround sound systems from Dolby, Sonos wireless speakers, Wi-Fi that works everywhere, even cameras to see what's going on around your home. They've got you covered. Call Integrated Media at 803-948-8327. Set up a time for them to come out to your house and talk with you about your wants and your needs. You want to cut the cord? They can help. Want one of those beautiful Samsung frame TVs that looks like art when it's not turned on? They do that too. Plus fantastic outdoor systems that let you enjoy your favorite team, movie, TV show, or music while you also enjoy our beautiful South Carolina weather. You can even stop in and see them at the Experience Center, 105 Snapdragon Court and Chapin, and get a real idea of what these things look like in your home. Do what I've done, and many of your friends and neighbors. Call 803-948-8327 and get home theater like never before from Integrated Media.
If you have an IRS problem, getting accurate legal advice could help get all this behind you right now. Hi, I'm local attorney John Ecton with the Ecton Law Firm. To get the best results for our clients, we stay on top of the law and the IRS rules and regulations. It's important to us to get you back on track and in compliance legally without worry for your future. At the Ecton Law Firm, we've handled hundreds of cases for everyday hardworking people like you right here in the Carolinas. Don't face the IRS alone. Know your legal rights. Call me to set up your appointment. The first visit is completely free and confidential. You'll meet with a licensed attorney in person at our office in Irmo, just off I-26. If you're facing IRS wage levies, bank levies, or tax liens, call me, John Ecton, at 803-771-9800. That's 803-771-9800. Or go to EctonLawFirm.com. Carolinas, if you have an IRS issue, you need a local attorney. You need me, John Ecton.
It's football season, and every football season, come to campus and catch a game. Whatever the game, whoever you're with, just catch a game. Find your tickets online at GamecocksOnline.com.
This year, Roy and Dana Finley are shaking things up at AAA Heating and Air. For the next 12 months, they're telling their customers no. Get a new system purchase with no payments and no interest until 2025. And don't forget their 15-year parts and labor warranty, $1,500 old system buyback, and guaranteed financing. So do what I did. Call AAA Heating and Air for your free estimate today and tell them Jay Phillips sent you.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
Powered by Integrated Media, The Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, a true reflection of quality. The Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. What you're talking about. Sponsored by Love Chevrolet, South Carolina's #1 volume Chevy dealer. Don't let the summer of savings pass you by. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Together, let's drive.
You already know that Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union offers truly free checking and great rates on auto loans. But did you know they do mortgages too? Whether you need a first or second mortgage, a home equity line of credit, or a loan for construction, renovation, a lot, or a manufactured home, Palmetto Citizens has you covered. They're a community financial institution based solely here in the Midlands, so they offer a refreshingly simple mortgage process you won't get from the big banks or online lenders. Along with a great rate, the Palmetto Citizens mortgage team will work with you to tailor the loan to best fit your needs and budget. Apply for your mortgage
Now,
today.
you went to Georgia, right?
I did, yes.
What is the tree that owns itself?
Oh, that is its own phenomenon. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's almost kind of like a running joke in town, I guess.
Gotcha.
But I forget what street it's on there, but it's a pretty unassuming tree if you didn't know any better.
Okay.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri along with you on this Thursday. Continuing on our conversation here in the 1 o'clock hour, which is football, and football, brought to you by our friends over at Atlantic Windows and Doors. I'm talking about cold seats, focused a lot on the SEC, and we just had a conversation with Ryan Nanny of the Shutdown Fullcast about coaches in the SEC that might be able to say that they are on a cold seat. We now want to kind of expand this into the upstate with the program that, I don't know, maybe one day will end up in the SEC if they can ever get out of the grant of rights in the ACC, though I don't think that's ever going to happen. Dabo Swinney, who again has accomplished so much in his time at Clemson. And, we know we laugh now when he says the little old Clemson moniker, but they really were that when he took over a decade and a half ago or however long ago it was. They won national championships.
Of age to be taking Clemson football, like to live and die with Clemson football, that do not know the verb Clemson. Like that's a reality of how much he's done there.
It was a thing of just hilariously falling on your face when the moment got too big, and they've completely thrown that under the rug now because they've been so good for so long. And obviously last year was a step back, and the fan base did get a little bit testy with, Daboisms to a degree, including our guy Tyler from Spartanburg and then a little spat last year. But I don't think anybody's going into this year saying, oh man, Dabo better clean it up or he's going to be fired after this year.
I don't think that Dabo is necessarily on a hot seat. Honestly, I don't think he's capable of being on a hot seat there, but I don't think that Dabo enjoys the assumed, trying to think of what the right word for it would be. I don't think he enjoys the assumed confidence from the fan base that he probably did even just 2 years ago.
Well, they got spoiled, right?
Yeah.
When you're perennially winning 10, 11 games and being in big bowls and the college football playoff, like you get used to it.
Sure, they got spoiled. That is absolutely fair. And I know the fact that this everybody listening, wherever in the state you are, I know the fact that this is originating from a radio station in Columbia is going to shade the way people view what I'm about to say. But the fact of the matter is, Dabo was not good enough to keep up with Nick Saban, to not be eclipsed by Kirby Smart, to keep up with Jim Harbaugh. And it's the reason fans got frustrated. The insular nature of the way he ran that program worked. That doesn't mean it was the right way to do it. That means he got lucky to have the right guys in those positions, and good for him. Like, he should be celebrated for that. But to count on being able to bring along, the next Tony Elliott, because that's how Tony Elliott did it, is a little bit foolish. The fact that he was afraid to use the transfer portal, like, there are things that were just not modern about that program. But here is where, Tyler, I think Clemson fans are a little bit smarter than we give them credit for, maybe. I think whether they will say it out loud or not, Clemson fans know the moment Dabo leaves, there's not going to be a line out the door to get that job.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that they'll express frustration, but nobody's standing outside of his house with pitchforks and torches trying to run him out of town, because they do understand at the end of the day what he's done for that program, and that he's turned them in to a perennial power team that, again, last year was a bit of a step back, but still his overall body of work there has been incredibly impressive. And this kind of ties into the conversation that we'll get into a little bit later on in the show about, their attempts to exit the ACC, where they're not the most desirable thing in the world when we talk about conference realignment, because they're already in the state where an SEC school exists, and they're not exactly in a bustling media market either. So, yeah, if Dabo Swinney decided to retire, or if he decided to take another job or whatever it may be, that I don't think you're necessarily going to get the A-level top-of-the-line coach to automatically go there and take over for him.
Realistically, what would even have to happen for him to be on the hot seat? I mean, it can't just be disappointment, right? We probably have to get all the way to losing seasons almost being what Clemson fans come to expect again. Like, he's done so much to raise that level.
And again, kind of going back to how much college football has changed, where, a decade ago, if you said, hey, Dabo Swinney's going to win 2 national championships for Clemson, you say, oh, well, that's a lifetime contract right there. There's nothing he could ever do that would make them run him out of town. But again, the sport has changed a lot, where if it's just continued, like, man, if they're just going 6-6 every year for the next handful of years, they'll eventually get sick of that and say, hey, we're thankful for what you did, but you're clearly over the hill. Let's go out there and find somebody else. But I don't think Clemson's going to be in that position. As resistant as he is to change, he is still a really good coach at the end of the day. And I think they're going to find their foundation back underneath them. I just don't know if it's going to be winning 11 and 12 games again every single year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and also, like, let's just be honest, and it's not fair or unfair. It is the reality of what happened. There are not a lot of coaches that luck into a run of Taj Boyd to Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, that is a once in a lifetime kind of run of quarterbacks, and the talent matters in this sport. Like, I mean, here, Spurrier kind of quote unquote lost his enthusiasm for the job when suddenly he didn't have Jadeveon Clowney anymore, right? Like, it's just a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cade Klubnik is certainly not what those other quarterbacks were on that great run that, Clemson was enjoying for roughly a decade there. And again, you're going to run into those hurdles at times. You do have to adapt. And again, if he was more open to the transfer portal, I'm sure there was a long list of guys that would have been willing to come to Clemson this year as their starting quarterback if they wanted to do that. But he decided not to do that. So we'll see how much better they can get, this season with having most of the same pieces returning from a year ago.
I think it's interesting you say Cade Klubnik is not that guy, because I think one of the things that people point to, the people that get the people specifically that love Clemson and get frustrated with Dabo. One thing they can point to specifically is DJ Uiagalelei, who the offense did not adapt to his skill set, and he's been able to be a viable starting quarterback for other teams. It was just in the Clemson system that was not going to work. And Dabo and his crew, his coaches, were trying to jam a square peg into a round hole rather than recognize that maybe the hole is the problem here.
Yeah, and that can be something that we see. Unfortunately, I kind of equate it to a program like Iowa, where, we dogged Brian Ferentz for how god-awful the offense was, but the offense has typically been awful under Kirk Ferentz as head coach. It's more of a system thing than it is who's actually calling the plays on offense. And I think Clemson kind of suffers to a degree there, where if you don't have that superstar quarterback, then and DJU obviously has done a lot to redeem himself at Oregon State. Now that he's going to be going down to Florida State, making his return to the ACC. But for he just wasn't the guy to fit what they were trying to do at that point in time. And obviously Cade Klubnik's not the same way either, as opposed to maybe doing like what somebody like Dow Loggins has done here at South Carolina, where you're truly making the offense around what your quarterback is able to do. Like you said, they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, saying, hey, the system's worked in the past. You got to figure out how to make yourself work in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is what I think everybody sort of gets wrong sometimes. Like the amount of shock coming out of Tuscaloosa about just how much Kalen DeBoer likes working with Jalen Milroe at Alabama. It's like, well, yeah, Kalen DeBoer's a professional, right? He knows what does and doesn't work for his quarterback. I think that's the kind of thing about Dabo that people get frustrated with. As much as Dabo likes to play the fun guy, he's kind of an authoritarian. And, for some guys that works. That's not a problem. For other guys, it is. And, I don't know that the authoritarian head coach has as long of a future in the new reality of college football as they did, say, when Dabo was playing, because his college head coach, Gene Stallings, certainly was an authoritarian type.
Well, and again, everybody can forgive the way that you lead if you're being successful with it. But the second you start turning the other direction and it looks like it's not working anymore, then people start having a problem with the way you go about it. I look at it, with Shane Beamer here at South Carolina, where, those first couple of years when they were overachieving, he's putting out videos on social media and having fun with the fans and the players and all that kind of stuff. Hey, that's great. We love our coach, got a great personality. But when you go 5-7 and he posts a funny video, what the heck are you wasting your time doing this for? Get back to watching film and get the team better. You know what I mean? So it can sour that quickly with those kind of things. And when you do have somebody that is a little bit more ruling with an iron fist, like Dabo Swinney does, when it's starting to turn in the other direction, it's like, okay, maybe this isn't the way we want to do this anymore.
What is your style of coaching when it comes to the old NCAA football games? Do you imagine yourself as a player's guy, or are you an iron fist kind of guy?
I'm actually very interested in this new dynasty mode where you can actually go as far as DMing recruits on Twitter and that kind of stuff.
Hell yeah.
I think I'm going to open myself up to being a little bit more of a player's coach, but I think I traditionally kind of went down the hard-nosed coach kind of role before. And the funny thing was, you obviously you're controlling the guy, but if I had a quarterback that threw like interceptions on like back-to-back drives, guess what? You're getting benched.
Nice.
Yes, I'm the one that actually threw those interceptions, but you are clearly not the answer at quarterback. We're going to go to the backup instead.
We are a little over 1 week away from us actually getting to play the first new college football game in over 10 years and 11 years. At this point, if you pre-ordered the premium bundle, you get to play it on Tuesday. The state dropped an in-depth look yesterday at what Willie B will look and sound like in the game. We'll dive into that coming up next. That is Tyler Head. I'm Dimitri Ravanos. This is 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network. You want to start with the text this time, just so we don't forget it?
Yeah, we can do that. I think there's actually some screenshots of what Willie B looks like.
Yeah. If you go to that state article, there's a really good, and I'll let you sort of describe the screenshots because you know the stadium better than I do.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the premier conference in the country for college football.
And Brett Venables with the Oklahoma Sooners. What won't be different this year, the game will be there again, live and in the flesh from the Omni Hotel in Dallas.
My wife's birthday was last week, and we did all that. I took spent what I was going to spend on that, and it wasn't until this week that I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to be buying a PS4 or PS5 here very soon because there's a new college football video game coming out. She was cool with it, but I was just like, I'll get past her birthday and then I'll have that conversation.
You know what? I'll save this for on air, but tell me that story on air and I will tell you the story that I had, or the conversation I had with my son.
Okay.
Full synthetic engine oil. It provides faster oil flow for hot and cold temperature protection in the harshest driving conditions. Regular use can help your engine run cleaner and longer by defending against sludge and buildup, improving overall engine performance and fuel efficiency while increasing the time between oil changes.
Make the switch without slowing down. Feed your ride Napa full synthetic engine oil. Available now at Napa locations nationwide.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Granger supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgranger.com or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Injured in a car wreck? Need your check? It's easy. Dial 1-800-ALL-7s now.
The Anasta Pool Law Firm has been recovering millions for their clients for over 30 years. Whether it's a slip and fall, car accident, or any other issues that have resulted from an accident, Anasta Pool Law Firm can help. Their South Carolina personal injury attorneys have experience fighting for the rights of their clients. Remember, don't scream. Call Akeem. Dial 800-ALL-7s now. Herb Glass is responsible for this ad, and cases are handled at 32 Ames Street, Charleston, South Carolina 29403. Paid endorsement, not actually client. Results may vary.
Hey guys, it's Preston Thorne for your broker, my broker, Benji Getzi at Buford Lending. Buford Lending is a true mortgage broker offering the widest variety of government mortgage programs and the best mortgage experience for clients through its state-of-the-art technology and record low interest rates. Their goal is to make your next mortgage experience and closing easier, cheaper, faster, and friendlier. Whatever you do, don't wait. Shop and lock your rate today with Buford Lending. Don't go to Wall Street. The rates are better on Bay Street. Online at Buford.mortgage.
Get in zone, AutoZone. Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
My car really needs a wash.
The $20 McGuire's bundle includes Gold Class Car Wash for a showroom shine.
Get in zone. And what about my tires?
Just spray the included Hot Shine tire coating and you're all set.
Get in zone. The inside is not great.
No problem. The quick interior detailer in the bundle can help with that too.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
The wait is over. Dell Technologies Black Friday and July deals are live. Check out incredible savings on select laptops and more, like the XPS 15, powered by Intel Core processors. The XPS 15 brings you the perfect balance of power and portability, plus stellar visuals and immersive sound. When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to exceptional tech and electronics, plus free shipping on everything. Don't miss out on Black Friday and July savings at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
The halftime show sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's time for Text of the Hour on the Firehouse Subs text line. On the
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri with you on this Thursday. It's time for our Firehouse Sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Jeff weighs in and says, brother's a Clemson fan. He has enjoyed the time at the top, but he said something interesting to me. He said that part of him hates the expectations of the program. He can't be happy with a close win because they should be stomping their competition. No excitement and no happiness in those close wins anymore, which, I mean, I guess that kind of comes with the territory that, you know, if you edge out a win against Wake Forest in overtime, it's like, well, we shouldn't have won the game by 3 points. We should have dominated them by 20.
It's interesting. Those moments feel amazing, but you hate and almost when your team is that good, come to resent the anxiety you have to go through to get to them.
It's a breath. It's a sigh of relief afterwards, but it's not something you can necessarily go and brag about at the water cooler on Monday, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, and my college roommates think I'm crazy for saying this. Don't get me wrong. I still want Alabama to win every game as an alumni of the school, but I think they've become boring. I mean, honestly, it's a big part of the reason why I love the sport wholeheartedly now, way more than I did when I was younger.
Right.
So the new version of NCAA football called EA Sports College Football 25 will be in stores 1 week from tomorrow. If you pre-order the premium bundle, you will get to play it as early as Tuesday. And Tyler, I don't know if you have been following this online or not, but the effort to make this as realistic and hit you in the feels as hard as possible has really been put in for every single school.
Listen, I've been hinging on every detail of this game
Yeah.
until it comes out next week. I've been playing NCAA 14 for the past 11 years.
Same here.
I have a national championship game to play this weekend, probably as my final farewell to that game before I move on to the new one. So yes, I've been dying to finally get my hands on this new game.
So obviously here in Columbia, a lot of people want to know exactly what to expect out of Williams-Brice Stadium. Chapel Fowler from the State dropped some details of that yesterday, and I want to play for you, Tyler, a couple of audio clips to show you how authentic the folks at EA went to make the experience. The first time you see Willie B on the screen, you are going to hear the classic Gamecocks chant as we get ready for a game to kick off. Hit it, Dave.
3, 2, 1,
Now you have multiple recordings of 2001. You obviously know Sandstorm is going to be in the game. You have multiple recordings of the fight song. But how about, Tyler, when the opponent is on third down? Oh, Willie B is going to sound like Willie B on a defensive third down. And the Cox get a first down on offense. EA Sports is going to make sure Willie B sounds like Willie B on first down. I'm not just playing for you recordings of these things, Tyler. These are the recordings that are being used in the game.
Yeah, and that is the beautiful thing about the time they've had to put in this game. Remember, it was supposed to come out last year. When they originally announced this, it was supposed to come out in 2023. They delayed it for an extra year. And that has been the big thing, the big selling point is they're putting every single amount of detail into this game that they can to give you the most authentic and realistic experience possible, which the former games did a really good job of that. But now we're jumping 2 whole console generations ahead, the PlayStation 5s and Xbox Ones and all that kind of stuff, to where what you can do with these games and the detail you can put into them is even more than what you had before.
And the open side, I guess you would call it, where the video board is of Williams-Brice, dude, that looks like Columbia, but behind it. Like, it's such a good job. I told my son, who is going to turn 13 in August, we downloaded or pre-ordered the premium pack, so we will get it on Tuesday. Right. And he said to me on Tuesday, I'm going to be up first thing in the morning to play the game. And I said, whoa, buddy, the line to play the game starts behind everybody that's been waiting 11 years to play the game. You'll play the game when I'm done with it.
I was going to say, he doesn't quite understand the struggle just yet.
No.
But, and that was something about, like playing 14 for the past 11 years is being in places where I know what it's supposed to look like outside the stadium here at Williams-Brice, Sanford Stadium in Athens, where Tech plays in Atlanta, like knowing the lay of the land around those stadiums, then looking at it and saying, that doesn't look quite right. So I am interested to see how good these other stadiums look now with not only the things in the stadium, but surrounding it as well. And this is one thing, just kind of looking at some of the screenshots here, the grass texture this year, 1,000 times better. That was one thing that bothered me about 14, because they had better ones in years prior. The one in 14 just looked like carpet. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't look like real textured grass, and that does seem to be making its return this year.
It is crazy how unifying this game is to everybody that grew up loving college football. Less or just over 1 week away for everybody to get to play it.
Yeah, I can't wait. Like I said, I told my wife that I'd be purchasing a PlayStation 5 here very soon. She was cool with that, so that's going to be happening within the next couple of days. And I'm the person that, I always grew up like buying games from Walmart or GameStop or whatever, where you go and get the tangible copy of the game. So I'm going to go the old school route. I am actually going to go buy the physical copy of the game instead of downloading it, just for the nostalgia of it all. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm proud of you. Going full nostalgia on this one. I guess we're up against it, right? We'll be back with hour number 3. Tyler Head, Dimitri Ravadas here on 107.5 The Game.
Quickly, as we wrap up this hour, I will remind people that the Game and Hardee's teaming up to make sure school students at Richland 1, Richland 2 school districts have all the supplies they need for the start of the school year. Bring your school supplies donations this Saturday from 2 until 4 with Elijah out at the Hardee's at 100 Creech Road in Blythewood. Again, donate to school supplies. You'll get a Hardee's coupon as well. Hang out with Elijah for a couple hours as well. Going to be a great time. Again, 100 Creech Road in Blythewood this Saturday from 2 until 4. Hour number 3 coming up on the halftime show in the game. Perfect 30-second filler.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I got kind of caught up using the clock on StreamYard and forgot that is not the official clock.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, we're, I guess, 2-ish minutes behind what actual time is.
Midstate Roofing's proven history is your assurance that our professionals at Midstate Roofing will provide the proper advice, service, and results to the needs of your facility in a manner both safe and pleasing to your operation. From high-rise to hospitals, manufacturing to industrial, Midstate Roofing designs and installs bonded systems with a protective guarantee that will keep your operation dry and running long into the future. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And this is Blake Langer, reminding you to protect that roof with a maintenance contract. Call me today at 803-356-1919 or online at midstateroofing.com. That's
2 more players arrested on reckless driving charges in
I
Athens.
saw that. I would assume that transfers to Oklahoma State coming soon.
If Kirby lets him out of the program. My thing about Athens is like there is such a police presence everywhere. Everybody there knows where you can speed and where you can't. You know what I mean? Like how they haven't figured that out, I don't know.
Yeah. What has been historically the relationship between the Athens Police Department and the football team?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think it's been prickly. I mean, going back to the Rick years, that was always a thing that a couple guys would get popped in the offseason. And, you know, Spurrier's quote about, hey, I love playing Georgia early in the year. They got you know, that was very much a real thing.
Yeah.
You just kind of rolled your eyes like, all right, who are we going to lose this offseason? But yeah, I think it's been a little bit prickly at times. Now, again, some of those guys are incriminated themselves and it wasn't, you know, Athens PD out looking for them. But, you know, some of the speeding things, you're like, okay, are they trying? Are they sitting outside the athletic complex and trying to do some of these things? I don't know. I never noticed anything in particular, but I guess I wasn't on the lookout for it.
Yeah, I mean, in Tuscaloosa, one of my best friends from high school was on the team. So I'd been with him when he got pulled over. And I mean, like for going 75 in a neighborhood and would just get a, hey, be careful there, buddy, and slap on the back kind of thing. I had never heard of things like when the report came out about the Tallahassee Police Department around the time of Jameis's arrest, where basically they're calling the athletic department to ask if they should arrest a guy or not. That's insane.
Right. That's a little too extreme. Like, still got to do your job, still got to uphold the law. But I don't know, in some of these places, and maybe I would think Tallahassee would be different because it's an actual like capital city.
Yeah, exactly.
But in some of these like smaller places like Lexington, Kentucky, I could see how the athletic department might have a little bit of a, you know, pulling the strings a little bit on what's going on up there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you know, when Coach K is like, you arrest one of my players, you give me a call first and we'll talk about it.
Right. Like I would think that, like, and this is not just because I hate them so much, but like Auburn the town of Auburn is basically the college in one off campus.
Yeah.
Setup. I would think that the football department or the athletic department has a pretty solid iron fist that it uses over the police department there.
I would imagine so. And I mean, players out there get in trouble too, but I'm sure there's plenty of things they've gotten away with too.
Yeah.
Quality fans. They have accessories and light kits, fan blades, and more. Stop by and see them soon. Harbison Boulevard next to Total Wine, or call Dan's Fan City 781 Fans. You'll be glad you did.
We all know about the speed of sound, but have
What was
you
that?
ever thought about the sounds of speeding? Drive too fast.
No, I don't.
The sound of your vehicle crashing, because one way or another, speeding catches up with you. Paid for by NHTSA.
I was gonna say he's an ex-officer now.
Congrats to the Gamecocks win.
Hour number 3, welcome back in. It is the halftime show here on the game. Tyler, Head, and Dimitri rolling along on your Thursday. You know, last summer was so interesting from the standpoint of all the realignment shifting that we had. We obviously knew things were on the horizon with Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC, Southern Cal and UCLA going to the Big Ten, but we had no clue what we were in for with the collapse of the Pac-12, the realignment of the Big 12, and everything that's transpired in the past 12 months to get to the point where we are today. And just when you think it has stopped, we keep getting these little bits of smoke that maybe the next dominoes might be falling soon, particularly in regards to some ACC schools that have been very vocal about not wanting to stay in their conference anymore.
Yeah, Chapel Fowler has been following the Clemson ACC lawsuit saga for the state, and he was paying close attention yesterday as new rulings were made. He's going to join us in about 30 minutes right now to give us the lay of the land of what it is we should know and think about some of those rulings yesterday. But Tyler, I really came out of, like, every time news was shared about it on Twitter, I'm not sure if Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina, who's playing this a lot quieter than those two schools are, I'm not sure if they are closer to leaving or more locked in than ever before. It's so hard to tell from one day to the next what is good and what is bad in the judges' rulings.
It almost seems like when you're this far down the road with it, you're going to do everything that you can to try and leave, to the point where it's expected to be in the neighborhood of like $700 million to get out. You say, you know what, we'll make that money up eventually. Let's just get out of here. Like, it seems like at least they're committed at this point to pushing this forward. And again, the lawsuits certainly are in their favor. And again, I'm going to kind of believe it when I see it. But strange things have happened in college football. And if they were to find their way to get out, I don't think they're going to be as attractive to some of these other conferences as they think they are. They might end up in the Big 12 or something like that. But if they can get out, more power to them.
No, I think that is very real. I think that when Red River made the move to the SEC, the ACC schools that are a little bit more football-minded recognize that there was a shift coming. When the LA schools went to the Big Ten, okay, this is getting for real now. And then when it finally got around to the ACC making moves, I understand these are college athletic conferences. I understand college academics is a part of what it is these guys go to these schools to do. But I have always thought that basing your athletic conference on academic fit is a losing game. Adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU, if you are an administrator at Clemson, FSU, or UNC, that had to tell you we are playing a different game than these guys. There is a different level. And I'm not just talking about football, Tyler. I mean athletics in general. We are a different level of serious than these guys are.
Well, especially now, because everything goes through television revenue, which is why these conferences have shifted and fallen apart because of how much money they can make on TV. What value do you bring to TV if you're a conference that has 3 or 4 good teams, then everybody else is pretty mid to terrible? And when you bring in, yes, SMU did have a good season last year in the AAC, and they might be the best of the competitive bunch of the new teams that joined the AAC, but they don't really move the needle like they did back in the 80s. And certainly the 2 California schools, most people there don't even know that they play football, for crying out loud.
No, exactly. I don't even know if like San Francisco radio stations are sending anyone to ACC media days next week, because who cares?
So we had a softball player that transferred from Stanford, Alana Vaughter, in with us in the Garnet Trust Hour a while back, and we asked her, like, what are football Saturdays like actually out in Palo Alto? And she said, I went to a football game and I got back to my dormitory or whatever, and there were a bunch of my friends sitting around studying, and they said, hey, where have you been? She's like, we just had a home football game today. Like, oh, we did? And I'm like, I think that perfectly encapsulates how people out there feel about football since, Andrew Luck has left, basically.
So you just mentioned, like, what kind of value do you bring to TV if you don't have enough or if you don't have enough true competitors to excite ESPN or Fox or whoever it might be? You and I have had this conversation, certainly off air. I don't know if we've had it on air or not, but I very much believe that if Clemson, Florida State, UNC, whoever, if they make their way out of the ACC and that leads to other ACC teams looking for better options, there are 2 teams that have a legitimate shot I think, of being picked up by the SEC, at least in the iteration of college sports that we know now. And it's Duke and UNC. The end. The conversation ends there.
Yeah, you could maybe make a case for the Virginia schools as well, because that is another state that the SEC does not already exist in, which again is the big knock that Clemson and Florida State have on them.
The difference, though, Tyler, is that like I've been in LA when Duke and UNC play in basketball, and the bar stops to watch that game. The Virginia schools don't have that following anywhere. The Virginia schools don't have a Michael Jordan or an Air Jordan brand associated with them that those two North Carolina schools do. Maybe if the North Carolina state legislature makes a stink, maybe given the fact that we don't have to do divisions and even numbers of teams anymore, maybe NC State has an outside shot. But Florida State and Clemson don't bring anything that the SEC doesn't already have.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of want to caution people when they are getting their news from Twitter. And look, I do it. Tyler does it. We all do it, right? We all look at Twitter sources to get our news. But Greg Swaim, I could not even tell you exactly what it is that the dude does, but he hosts some sort of show out in Oklahoma. And he has been banging realignment drums that go nowhere all year long. This is the dude that started the rumor about A&M to the Big Ten.
Yes.
That didn't happen. That is nowhere near happening, as far as most of us know. Well, yesterday, he tweeted that according to multiple sources, here's his tweet. Breaking. According to multiple sources tonight who cover conference realignment, back-channel conversations have all but ceased between the SEC and Big Ten conferences with FSU and Clemson for now. I cannot tell you this with any more certainty than Greg Swaim had. Well, with more certainty in the sense that I am using common sense than Greg Swaim has. The SEC is not interested in Florida State and Clemson. They have made that very clear.
Here's my thing. If this were happening, we would have heard about it from the Ross Dellingers of the world, the people that are really tapped in to what's going on with conference realignment. Like, those are kind of the first sources you go to. One guy saying, hey, they were talking. Like, I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah, agreed. The rest of Greg Swaim's tweet is, however, talks with the Big 12 have intensified. Don't be shocked if ESPN and Fox Sports are pulling those strings to make it happen. I would tell you this. Anytime someone says they know ESPN and Fox are pulling strings on realignment, you can dismiss them right away. If ESPN and Fox are ever pulling strings, they will do it very slightly and very quietly. Certainly, they were not going to stand in the way of Red River coming to the SEC, but at no point did Jimmy Pitaro, the president of the SEC, pick up the phone and call the SEC and lay the path for Texas and Oklahoma to come to the conference. It just does not work that way. This, to me, is a dude with no sources covering his ass when what he has been saying will happen does not happen, and what more likely is to happen could. And by the way, I don't even think it will.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part of the social media age that we live in, because if you have a decent amount of followers, if you're somebody that does have a platform like whatever kind of show this guy hosts, if you throw something out there into the ether, people that don't know who you are going to take that and say, hey, this guy, he's got a blue check mark or whatever it may be, must be legit, right? And then that just starts this whole conversation and snowball rolling of something that is not even remotely true. And then when it doesn't end up happening, they're like, well, this one guy said it was going to happen. And again, we're back at the beginning of this mess. So you do have to definitely be careful as you're navigating through that waters of who you're listening to and who you're not, because there are legitimate voices in college football, like I said, Ross Dellinger, that I would trust just about anything that he says in terms of conference realignment. And if he's not talking about it, it's probably not happening.
So I wanted to ask you this, because certainly we have heard a ton of cases of this at the G5 level, right? For years, USF, Southern Florida, did not want Central Florida in the Big East. I think in this last round of realignment, Western Kentucky did not want Eastern Kentucky coming up to join Conference USA. If there was buzz of Clemson coming to the SEC and it was any sort of legitimate, I don't know that you would be hearing rumblings from South Carolina fans about it, but they would certainly have opinions. People at South Carolina, at the university that matter, would have opinions about it. And we haven't heard anything like that. Like, do you remember how outspoken the president, and I cannot remember his name, I think it was the president, might have been the athletic director. I think the president at the time of Louisiana Tech was about dismissing the idea of ever having to play in the same conference as Lafayette and Monroe. I mean, I don't know that if you are at an SEC school, you are as territorial, but certainly someone would have weighed in if there was any fire to this smoke.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just historically speaking, South Carolina, again, for the financial standpoint of being in the SEC, has that advantage over Clemson, and they don't want to see them close that gap. So any way you can finagle your way to try and keep them out of the SEC, you obviously want to do that. And again, that's what kind of going back to the original point of why teams like Clemson and Florida State aren't as attractive as some people within their fan base think they are, because the SEC already exists in the 2 states of South Carolina and Florida. And again, Greenville's not the bustling metropolis that a Dallas is or something like that, where you're going out there and bringing Texas in. So the value of what they bring to the conference, pales in comparison to the teams that are already there. And again, if you're already in a state with a team like South Carolina, you're not adding anything more to what you already have.
Yeah, and listen, I know that we are, in addition to being on in Columbia, we're also on in Florence and Myrtle Beach. So maybe there are more Clemson fans there that probably are firing back. Well, Columbia is not necessarily a bustling metropolis either. But the thing I would remind you is there are more USC than Clemson fans in the state. There are more Florida fans than Florida State fans. There are certainly more Florida fans than Miami fans in the state of Florida. There were more Texas fans than there were A&M fans. Oklahoma and Texas are marquee brands. Clemson and Florida State just are not. And as you and I sit here and talk about this from an SEC perspective, we can do a couple of things. We can talk about what we know of the conference. We can poo-poo teams from another conference, and it's just a conversation that 2 dudes are having. Now, those 2 dudes happen to be on the radio, so maybe some people are going to form their opinions based on what you and I are saying. It doesn't really matter, though, right? Sure. I think the real thing that the conference, the ACC, is worried about is, remember, they're doing their media days next week as well.
Yeah.
And they'd love to talk about a bigger, stronger conference. Dude, I think this is the only story at ACC Media Days. I really do. I mean, maybe Mike Norvell's going to field some questions about just how flirtatious he was with Alabama, about not making the playoff despite going undefeated. But I guarantee you, whatever excitement they are hoping SMU, Cal, and Stanford generate is going to be overshadowed by, hey, is Clemson leaving? Hey, is Florida State leaving? Hey, what's the deal with UNC? Let's dive into that next here on 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
Powered by Integrated Media and Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass.
How long
do I have you? Like 3-4 minutes.
Okay.
107.5 The Game. Broadcasting live from the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Up to 20K off new Silverados. Stop by or shop online today and see why Herndon Chevrolet makes you smile. Together, let's drive.
Hey, it's Caitlin from Craft and Draft. Did you know Craft and Draft the Vine Street turns 10 this summer? Join us July 13th from 12 to 8 for our Eras celebration. We are closing down the block to host live music and vendors. Cousins Maine Lobster and our chef Raz from Irma will be cooking up delicious food options. We have special beer releases from our brew days with Peak Trip, Savage Craft, Angry Fish, Tradesman, and Indigo Reef. We hope you can join us July 13th from 12 to 8. Cheers!
Get ready to smile because Herndon Chevrolet, your hometown Chevy dealer, is offering an amazing deal. Right now, get a whopping $20,000 off new Silverados. Yes, $20,000 off. Don't wait. Head over to HerndonChevy.com today and drive over the truck of your dreams. Chevy, together let's drive. Herndon Chevrolet, Herndon makes you wanna smile. Call 803-510-5447 for complete details.
One of the few jingles that is actually a bop.
It's a good
Yeah, right. I doing this job, I can probably recite every single commercial with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
Because I hear them so often.
In 2012, I was doing a like political news kind of talk show on this tiny, tiny little station that most of the commercial breaks were PSAs. And it got to the point that I could start to say some of those that were even like 2-sided conversations in my
Sure.
sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm in here 6 hours straight every single day.
Yep.
Producing for 3 of those hours. Yeah. They get they get burned in there pretty quick.
Those commercials start to show up in your dreams.
Honestly, I think that's actually happened a few times.
Dude, that's like when you talk about how much we all used to play the NCAA game. I used to dream about, like, I could distinctly remember dreaming about the attribute cards for guys from sitting there playing for like 7 hours straight.
Oh, and then because the commentary was only so deep on that game, and you knew after certain plays that Herbie was going to say a particular thing. You could almost recite it from memory at that point in time.
Right. That's funny. You know that saying, "Get out your keys because we're on a drive"?
Yeah.
That was always my favorite because it was like, no, I've never heard that before in my life, Herbie.
Yeah. And that's something I don't think I've ever heard him say actually in a game either.
Right. I like that they are doing multiple broadcast teams.
I do too.
My son and I play FIFA all the time.
Uh-huh.
And we just for the first time played a game where we did not get the top broadcast team, and it rocked his world.
That's awesome. See, I almost kind of wish, because like the last couple games had the ESPN licensing where you were actually like on an ESPN broadcast. And I wish, you could have like, all right, big game, you're on ESPN or ABC, low end game, you're on ESPN Plus. You got like the remote broadcasters that aren't even in the stadium. Like you could really go a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish the NFL would do that with Madden as well. To like, all right, there's a difference between playing at 4:25 on Fox and playing at 1 o'clock on CBS.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like changing up the broadcast team with that instead of, I haven't bought Madden in years, instead of getting Brandon Gaudin and Charles Davis for every single game.
So this last version, I think it's always Brandon Gaudin, but his analyst changes based on the degree of the game. Like if you're like 2, 4 and 10 teams playing each other, you get oh shit, the guy that's on the Fox college football game, Brady Quinn. If it is a mid-tier game, if you're one of the Sunday games, you get Charles Davis, and if it's a top-tier game, you get the guy on NBC with Mike Tirico,
Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworth. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a little different, at least.
The game in Florence and the 107.5 The Game app.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler along with you. Correct that. Okay, there we go. Talking all things conference realignment as of right now, as there's a lot of smoke out there about the potential of Clemson and Florida State and maybe potentially getting out of the ACC at some point in time. We'll talk to Chapel Fowler of the state coming up here in a little bit, get the latest details on that lawsuit with the ACC and Clemson up in North Carolina yesterday. But talking about ACC Media Days, which are coming up next week, and you brought that point up in the last segment there, that this is the elephant in the room, that there is no way to talk about anything else. Like, hey, Coach Norvell, what do you think about your team this year? As opposed to, hey, are you guys going to be in the ACC next season? Or what's the deal here? Because there's a very important date of August the 15th coming up that if Florida State and Clemson had the ability to leave the ACC, they would have to inform them by then of where they are going.
Yeah, and you look at, like, I don't know if the ACC has done what the SEC has done and released, like, this team will be here on this day and this team will be here on that day. I'm positive they have, because I know some people that are going to a certain 2 days, but not every day.
Right.
By the way, I don't think the ACC calls their media days. I think they call it Operation Football, which, hey, that's why you're the ACC. But here is the reality is, like, you are going to have a lot of people peppering the coaches of Clemson, Florida State, and UNC for sure with these questions, right? But you don't think that Manny Diaz at Duke is going to be asked about his arch rival flirting? Do you not think that Mario Cristobal at Miami is going to be asked about his arch rival flirting with possibly leaving the conference? Like, this is going to be everywhere. And this has been my complaint about the ACC ever since they kicked off the big realignment back in, what was it, 05 when they brought in Boston College, Virginia Tech, and Miami?
Right.
At that time, Miami obviously was what it was. They were a football brand. Virginia Tech at that point was in the last, or I guess entering the last decade of the Beamer era, its golden days. That was a good get. Boston College, what? Why? Right? And then in 2014, we get everybody's big realignment. A&M and Miami, or excuse me, A&M and Missouri, rather, go to the SEC. Nebraska goes to the Big Ten. We get Maryland and Rutgers going to the Big Ten. And the ACC, who just lost Maryland, responds with Syracuse and Pitt. What? Oh, and Louisville. What?
Right. Yeah.
Like, at some point, the ACC was going to have to either accept what their fate was going to be, which I think the Big 12 did a pretty good job of.
Mhm.
Like, they took lemons, and I don't know if you would say they made lemonade, but certainly they're not making the pucker face anymore. They're pretty happy with what they have. The ACC doesn't understand how they got left behind, and I look at all of their moves and can't understand how they don't see why they got left behind.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, but that piece by piece, it may not be as overly shocking to you. But when you step back and look at the whole thing, and you're like, wow, this is the state of the conference now, especially when you look at, all right, Florida State obviously had the great season they had a season ago. Clemson's obviously been in the mix for the college football playoff on a year in, year out basis for basically the past decade. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, you'll get a Louisville that'll pop up and have a good season, but there's no consistent contenders in the rest of the ACC from top to bottom. And the bottom of the ACC is god-awful and terrible. And you just made it even worse by bringing in teams like Stanford and Cal that have been pretty bad in the Pac-12 in recent years themselves. So yeah, top to bottom, the conference isn't good overall. And I kind of think back to the Pac-12 media days from last year, where they were in the midst of collapsing at that point in time, and every question was about realignment. Or is this team staying? Is this team going? And George Kleinkoff tried to get up there and sell blue skies as best he could. That we got a media deal that's on the horizon, or it's almost done, to where he couldn't respond to the question of, does that mean it's actually done? And we obviously know it wasn't at that point in time. And, things kind of fell apart from there. So I'm very interested to see how Jim Phillips, commissioner of the ACC, handles things next week, as well as all these coaches. Because, yeah, that's the burning question in everybody's mind is, what does this conference look like going forward?
So for people that have heard me on the station before but don't know me well, I live in Raleigh, right? I live in the heart of the ACC footprint. And one thing that I see a lot that I think exists within the league office more than it needs to is this insistence that tradition matters. And I'm not saying traditions don't matter in college sports. Obviously they do. That's why we fought so hard to get the video game back. But you cannot insist that your tradition matters as much to your members as it does to you. You cannot do, basically, as a conference, what Dabo was doing as a coach at Clemson and insist your way has worked for long enough. How dare you question it when the rules of the game have changed? Why would a Florida State or a Clemson or a UNC want to be in a conference with a Pittsburgh anymore? Right?
Sure.
Pittsburgh, like, who outside of Pittsburgh is making time to pay attention to what Pittsburgh is doing?
Not many people.
Who outside? This is the thing, right? Like, I think that you can tell a conference's level of comfort by what their landmass looks like. And if you're the SEC and that landmass is completely connected, you feel pretty good. You don't have to do anything else. A, you're in prime real estate. And B, to make yourself even better, you didn't have to do anything that makes your members uncomfortable necessarily. The Big Ten, you're maybe a little less secure because while everything doesn't touch, at least you added a land mass as opposed to some teams here or there. Big 12, okay, little scattered on the eastern side, but they were able to add a contiguous group of states out west, and that conference makes a little more sense. The ACC, with a team already in Kentucky, they allow Notre Dame to vote on conference matters, but not really fully join the conference. And oh, by the way, here are a couple of teams in California. Here's a team in Texas. Like, dude, you're barely a step above the AAC and Conference USA for continuity at this point.
Yeah. Well, and that's the question that, when you take the Florida States and the Clemsons, and to a degree, when we talk about basketball, specifically the North Carolinas and the Dukes out of the ACC, what do they have? What is the selling point in their conference at that point in time? Not a whole lot. And I don't view them as that much different than the AAC at that point in time. And I think for a lot of people, when SMU and the two California, reject schools from the Pac-12 joined the ACC, I think so that's when everybody said, okay, now we've gotten a little bit ridiculous when it comes to conference realignment, given the fact also that the name ACC no longer applies to what your conference is, which, all the numbered conferences don't really apply anymore anyway. So what does that really matter at this point in time? But yeah, it's very much that like, okay, you're just kind of piecing it together at this point in time, taking whatever scraps that you can that are continuing to bring down the value of your conference as a whole.
But again, who was the conference member in the ACC that sort of strong-armed that through, that said they can't imagine a world where their conference doesn't want elite academic institutions like Cal and Stanford and SMU, who not only has great academics, but is a moneyed university. Notre Dame, who refuses to fully join the conference. Like, my God, it's like what? It's like allowing a man to date and go to bed with your wife, and you're just fine with it.
Well, and for SMU's case, they're paying to be there themselves. So
yeah, but SMU is. See, this is the thing. I'm not sure who looks more desperate, SMU or the AA or the ACC.
Yeah,
SMU, you get it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty bad on both fronts there. And again, if Clemson and Florida State were to leave the ACC, I think the SMU would look around and say, this isn't really much different than where we just came from, is it?
No, at that point, all you did was avoid being in a conference with North Texas. Like, good for you, I guess.
Yeah.
Chapel Fowler covers all of this stuff more closely when it comes to Clemson than Tyler and I do. So he can answer some questions about what exactly is happening, how we should feel about yesterday's ruling, and what he expects from ACC Media Days. That is coming up next here on 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
This summer, Hardee's and the Game are teaming up for a back-to-school supply drive. It's all about giving back. By dropping off essential supplies like pens, pencils, folders, and calculators.
Time for my daily Celsius.
Wait, isn't that the alcohol?
No, it's not.
Boo. What is your flavor of sparkling water?
This is wild berry. I don't think I've had this one before.
Uh-oh, look at you.
Just need I gotta have a kick of caffeine at some point in the day.
That's why my wife is a coffee aficionado, and I do not like coffee at all. So I start every morning with a 5-hour energy. That is my shot of caffeine.
That is my usual go-to. I go to the dollar store and I'll buy like 6 or 7 of them, just keep them in my bag at all times.
Yeah.
Inevitably, I'll be in the middle of the show like dying. I'm like, I need a kick of energy, so I'm not one of those back. But sometimes I enjoy just legitimately drinking something too. So these are good go-to or whatever. Yeah, that's fun. Or I could have filled it with a promo, but PSAs are cool.
Usually active, but since I've been in pain, I've had to limit the activities I'm doing.
See, I drink coffee mainly on weekends because, like, I just have to keep going to the bathroom to pee, and I'm like,
right,
I don't want to have to do that in the middle of a show 5 times, so I have to be a little more strategic about the type of drinks I have.
Just wait till you hit your mid to late 30s. Did you pee yet? You might want to pee again.
Looking forward to it. I'm 28. I'm 28 now.
I couldn't remember if you were. I was thinking 29, and then I thought, no, wait, younger. But I couldn't remember how much younger.
I was born in '96, and I was about 2 weeks old when the Olympic torch came through.
Sure.
You're the reason it came through. Yeah, exactly. So, and you know, I was alive to see Kurt Angle win a gold medal with a broke freaking neck. I guess.
Ah.
Do you know I don't know if you're a wrestling fan. Do you know the lore behind that?
No, I don't.
So Kurt Angle, who went on to wrestle in the WWE.
Yeah. I watched WWE up until like 2000.
Okay, but so his thing was, I won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck.
Oh, I mean, I don't remember that, but obviously I knew he had won a gold medal and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It was he had fractured his neck, and they told him he couldn't compete. And then he got some doctor to clear him, and went out there and won the whole thing. So
that was one of the best character introductions I could ever remember in WWE.
He was so dang funny.
Yeah.
And like when they allowed him to lean into his humor, phenomenal character.
Yeah, he was a great foil, even though like Chris Jericho was a favorite of mine because I always thought his matches were entertaining, but
he's still wrestling, by the way.
Oh, I talked to him last year, and we talked about the fact that he is still wrestling and that he doesn't have quite the same physique he used to.
A little flabby.
He is, but you know what? He's also doing some really cool stuff with his podcast. Like he's thinking about the day that all the wrestling stuff comes to an end. But his point of view on it is like they're still cutting checks. Like, why would I stop if they're still cutting checks?
He's been with AEW pretty much since the beginning. I mean, and he reinvents his character every 6 months, it seems like.
Yeah. When he, I thought Angle, as much as I preferred Jericho, I thought Angle was a good foil to Jericho because while Jericho was the epitome of, false machismo, false bravado, Angle was so goofy the other way that it worked great.
Yeah. The milk truck. Classic.
The Angle Undertaker feud.
Oh my God.
Was wonderful.
I was listening to an interview with the Undertaker the other day, and they were talking about what Kurt Angle was like, because he was like, he was trying to get me a break on TV every single week because he'd come out there with the do-rag on or, be doing something stupid. And it's like, it took everything in my being to still try and be the Undertaker on TV, but not laugh at what Kurt Angle was doing.
Do you know that for a little while, maybe he still does for all I know, I'm not sure. Do you know that the Undertaker owned or at least co-owned a tattoo shop in Mobile, Alabama?
Doesn't surprise me. Mobile's kind of surprising, I guess, but
that's where Paul Bearer was from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Welcome back into the halftime show. Tyler Head and Demetri Ravanos along with you on this Thursday. We'll get to the greatest day in the history of the world in just a couple of moments, but we've been talking this hour about everything going on with the ACC, possible realignment, possible teams trying to leave the conference itself. We now welcome in on the Love Chevrolet phone lines who covers Clemson football for the state, Chapel Fowler. Chapel, appreciate your time hanging out with us for a few minutes on this afternoon. Big day yesterday from a court perspective up there in North Carolina in the saga between the ACC and Clemson. And it seems like, at least for yesterday, the ACC came out on top, at least in the short term.
Yeah, they definitely did. Thanks, guys, for having me. Yesterday definitely was kind of one of those first initial steps in the long legal process that this is. Not entirely unexpected, I'll say. The judge that heard Clemson's arguments about why this countersuit that the ACC has filed against Clemson in reaction to Clemson's lawsuit, the judge heard arguments from Clemson about why that should be dismissed. A lot of that came down to Clemson's argument of sovereign immunity, that, they're a state arm. They can't be sued outside of their own state without consent. But he came down with a pretty firm 53-page ruling, really heavy on legal analysis and precedent from the North Carolina Supreme Court, and used a lot of the same arguments that he used in denying a similar motion from Florida State in that separate lawsuit in that saga. He was pretty clear in saying, you know what, to me, North Carolina is the spot to hear not just this Clemson ACC case, but all of these disputes. So, no surprise to see the ACC celebrate that decision. They sent out a statement saying as much. So it is a little expected, I'd say, just given what I heard in that courtroom and how the judge had ruled previously. But yes, 100%. This is an early win for the ACC. It doesn't define how the rest of stuff will go, but it's definitely a notch in their belt that they're pretty happy about.
So you pointed this out on Twitter that not only is Clemson planning to appeal, but Florida State also plans to appeal the ruling it got from the North Carolina Supreme Court earlier this year. I do wonder what it is the ACC sees as the ideal outcome. I mean, are there people I'm not sure if the office has already moved to Charlotte or not, but Greensboro, Charlotte, whichever it is, that believe it is possible to kiss and make up and go about business as usual in the future with these schools?
Yes, they have. They formally, everybody, I think, employees and all, moved formally there sometime last summer. So they're totally in Charlotte now. I think more than anything else, no matter how spicy Florida State and Clemson are being, business is business, and these are two incredibly valuable business partners and properties for the ACC. It's two of their most valuable schools, from everything from media rights to exposure to football success, and how much that drives everything. So I think more than anything else, like, the ACC knows it has a pretty strong contract binding these schools to it. So I can see why they're kind of thinking, well, why would we let up with that? They've been really intentional in public in saying that we're going to fight this because we believe the grant of rights was signed for a reason by many people. Clemson's president, who was the chair of the committee when it got re-signed, included, and that was for stability and such. They've been really adamant about that. So, as awkward as it is, like, as all this goes on, if you think about it, when the 2024 football season starts, Clemson and Florida State are still trying to win as many games as possible, right? They're not going to take their season to tank their value and make the ACC mad, right? Like, everybody is, when football season comes around, still trying to win games. So that stuff kind of exists to the side of all these legal disputes. So I think from the ACC perspective, it's really that. It's, you guys are suing us, but we're going to keep fighting because, you're stuck with us right now, and we think you're going to be stuck with us. So kiss and make up is a good way to put it. I guess that's to be seen if that's the final end result, how that would actually go. But I can still understand
Florida
from
State,
your business perspective. Yeah.
Clemson and Florida State don't have to tank their value to hurt the ACC. The conference does a good job of that every time it adds new schools. I mean, I don't, this is one of those things where, in hindsight, to me, it is absurd that the conference is claiming they can't understand how we got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that Clemson and Florida State are totally correct in saying. You've seen over the years the ACC be a lot more reactionary instead of proactive. I mean, the schools they took in last year, you can take all the academic prowess of those schools, but I mean, from a pure realignment perspective and what realignment is, which is like a football at the top, athletic driven thing that conferences are doing to try to make themselves more interesting and tantalizing for big billion-dollar TV deals that are so much bigger than anybody probably could have guessed. But I mean, most people had an idea that that's where things were going. I mean, there's been realignment cycles in the past and stuff that was going to happen and didn't happen. You see the deals that have been inked over the years, and the ACC's ESPN deal for 20 years started to look pretty bad in comparison to other ones really quickly after it got signed. So the conference is definitely not immune from criticism in that way too. They've kind of stood pat on a lot of things. And then, I mean, to add Cal, Stanford, SMU, I don't think there were many ACC fans of any school, whether it was Clemson, Florida State, or otherwise, that were super gung-ho about those additions.
And talking to Chappell Fowler from the state on the latest with the ACC lawsuit against Clemson and Florida State. And it does kind of seem like you're almost kind of at the point of no return, where they're going to continue to do everything they can to try and get out of the conference. And Brett Yormark of the Big 12, made mention earlier this week at their media days, they're open to welcoming in more members, which would provide a possible landing spot for those schools should they get out of the ACC. Now, again, they want to go to a place like the SEC or the Big 12, or the Big 10, but should they have no other option, the Big 12 would be an okay landing spot. Does that maybe, I don't want to say light a fire to continue to pursue this, but at least provide comfort knowing that if you get out, you at least have somewhere to go, should you be able to escape?
Yeah, I think so. I saw somebody make the point a few days ago, I'm forgetting who, but if you're Clemson in this situation, you want to be on the proactive side of trying to get out of your grant of rights and all this stuff you're in with the ACC and make yourself more, like you want to make yourself more of an option for people. They've said a lot in their lawsuit. They've complained that this grant of rights setup has hindered their availability for other conferences, their ability to negotiate. I mean, anybody who sees that huge exit fee and grant of rights money tied to a school leaving, you can see why other conferences would see that and be like, okay, well, figure that out before we're going to get serious with you. But I think Clemson is trying to be active and, I mean, suing the conference and they're a legal underdog in this. I think anybody would say that, just given how ironclad, quote unquote, that grant of rights is, that this level of challenge has never really happened before in college athletics. But I think for them, they'd rather go for it than stand pat. And I mean, shoot, that stuff changes every single day. Who's open for business, who isn't, and where someone's going to go or not go. Like it's you want to have yourself in the mix though, right? So I think whether it's SEC, Big 10, Big 12, I mean, any of those schools could change their position on adding schools or not adding schools like any moment. And everything's always evolving, no matter what. So again, if you're a Clemson fan, I think you understand why they've sued. There's a lot of money involved, but it's better to go for it than just sit back in the ACC and see everybody else reap in those extra 10, 20, $30 million per school.
Chappell, I know you can't speak for the ACC or any other member schools, but in covering Clemson, I wonder if you have gotten any clue about, like, certainly Dabo and his players know this is the only thing people are going to want to ask them about at media days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there any sort of like extra coaching or preparation they're getting?
I think they've been pretty well coached on it for a few years now. And that starts at the top, like Dabo's default response for all that stuff for years. And he says the same thing about, like, if he's connected to a coaching vacancy or if it's conference related, for this conference stuff his go-to is, that's a Graham Neff question and a Jim Clements question, talking about his athletic director and his president. So he's been around this stuff for a few years to the point where it doesn't faze him. And I think the default player response there is, just focused on football, which is a easy and valid answer for a 20-year-old kid who's not involved in all these online court document scrollings that I'm doing every single day, along with so many other people. So yeah, it's going to be a hot topic. There was a hot topic last year and the year before that. And I think they know it's coming for sure. I mean, they've coached up people before and it's gone pretty well. Dabo especially, he doesn't really get himself into many word salads with that stuff. He always just says, give us a schedule, give us the 12 games, we'll play them. We don't care. Like, we're here focused on 2024. So expect to hear that in 2 weeks up in Charlotte.
He is Chappell Fowler. He covers Clemson for the State. Chappell, thanks so much for taking time and explaining this in a little more detail to us today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, we are about to put the wraps on the show for today. And Tyler, are you aware that the ESPYs are tonight?
I am now.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel, right? Like, this used to happen exclusively on that day after baseball's All-Star game when nothing else was going on. We are going to talk about that coming up in just a moment to put the wraps on the show for today. He is Tyler Head. I'm Demetri Ravanis. This is 107.5 The Game and the Game Sports Network.
Guess no baseball players will be there to accept their awards.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. I mean, shit, there's a whole group. All the best basketball players aren't there to accept their awards.
That's true as well. All right, here's LeBron via satellite accepting his award. Maybe they can go ahead and give Bronny Rookie of the Year or Rookie of. I don't even know what the awards are at this point in time. But maybe they can give him.
That's the thing, right? Like I'll talk more about this on air, but do these mean anything to anyone? Like, you care about who won the league MVP, not who won the ESPY for best male basketball player.
Yeah, they're look. I don't like award shows in general.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a new one, whether it be the Oscars or the Emmys or whatever, every single weekend. There's too many of them. And with those are voted on by like a select group of people in Hollywood, which is why movies that you've never heard of win awards and blockbusters.
I used to like the Oscars when I was reviewing movies because I like to see if my opinion matched up with what the Academy was. But I will tell you one thing that becomes more and more clear is the people voting on the awards are of a certain, I'm going to guess age group, but certainly mindset when all you have to do is set your movie in World War II in England and you are automatically nominated for Best Picture.
Right.
Like Dunkirk is the most boring shit I've ever seen in my life. How on earth did that get nominated for Best Picture?
Right.
The King's Speech is awful, and it won Best Picture. And it's only for one particular reason.
Well, it's like, DiCaprio didn't win an Oscar for the Titanic or Wolf of Wall Street or anything like that, and he gets it for The Revenant. It's like, that was the movie that really set him apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know. I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. When I did music radio back in Athens, and that was just my side thing in addition to doing the sports stuff. Like, I would skim those kind of things. Like, all right, who won this award? Because I might talk about it for 20 seconds on the air, but that was the extent. Like, I never did anything more than that.
What format did you work in music radio?
Adult contemporary, 80s, 90s, and today. Which extends from 2000
right
till now. And I did ask the question to the PD, like, we're ever going to go like 20,000 to 2000s and 2010s? Or like, yeah, we haven't had to yet. So,
yeah, I was explaining to someone just today that, like, dude, Nevermind by Nirvana is older now than Abbey Road by the Beatles was when Nevermind came out.
And it's so, because in doing that, I voice tracked everything. It wasn't live.
Yeah.
So I would come in and, I'd listen to the last 20 seconds of a song, do my hit, and then play over the intro of whatever the next song is. And there were so many songs that are burned into my mind from doing that. Like, I almost get like PTSD when I hear the intro or the outro, because I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell people about this contest that we're having this weekend or something like that.
Right.
Like, I ended up not enjoying that by the time I was done with it.
Yeah. Music radio, to be fair to where I started my career, sucks.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
Yeah. And like, if that was the only thing I was doing and I dedicated all my time to it, sure. But like, it just being a side thing that I was getting paid really nothing much to do anyway. And like, it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Any item and 10 tantalizing free gifts. That's free 66. Again, free 66.
I'll hit the text real quick and then we'll hit the SPs.
Okay. Don't you have to do greatest day too?
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler and Dimitri wrapping it up here on your Thursday postgame show with Jay and Elijah. Coming up in just a few minutes, top 3 o'clock hour. It is time to hit our Firehouse Sub text of the hour. Tommy weighs in, going back to our conversation about the new EA Sports College Football video game. Says, not a big gamer, but my son is. We'll be able to pick teams from the past to play with, like Spurrier era teams. That is going to be a big no. In fact, past teams are actually what ended up ending the game in the first place, that led to the O'Bannon lawsuit from having former players that weren't getting compensated for their name, image, and likeness. So you will have to play with current teams, though there is an ultimate team aspect of it, much like Madden does with former players. I don't know of any South Carolina players that have officially been named, but I imagine like a Clowney or somebody like that's probably going to pop up an ultimate team at some point. So you might have the opportunity to play with a select few former players, but nobody, like you're not going to be able to play with like the 2011 team or something like that.
I think Lamar Jackson sort of made the point that, like, there's a whole generation of dudes that didn't get to be in the game that cannot wait to play with themselves in the game. I know that sounds way dirtier than I mean for it to, but you get where I'm going with it.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, the Joe Burrow LSU team, Lamar Jackson. I mean, Johnny Manziel was in the last game, but missed out on a year of him after his high. Or well, no, we would have had in both years of him, I guess. But yeah, a long list of guys that never got to be in the game. Quickly, as we transition over to the ESPYs, though, greatest day in the history of the world. Do have to hit this really quick. And funny enough, back in 2012 was the 20th edition of the ESPYs. LeBron James and Brittany Griner taking home award. So not foreign having it on July the 11th, but as you mentioned a moment ago, foreign to have it not the day after the baseball All-Star game.
I can't stress this enough. I hope nobody falls for this BS. Not just the ESPYs themselves, but the controversy, I guess, the made-up controversy around the ESPYs. Like you saw a couple of weeks ago, the number of people that, like, I guess had a real problem with Prince Harry or former Prince Harry winning an award named for Pat Tillman. Like, dude, does anything happen at the ESPYs that you care about? Like, do you, and I'm asking you, the general you, but also you, Tyler.
Sure.
Is there any part of you that thinks, oh, forget the Heisman Trophy. What matters is who wins best college athlete at the ESPYs in June. Forget the NBA MVP. Who's the best male basketball player at the ESPYs?
Ask me who won any of those awards at last year's ESPYs.
I can tell you who won a single award in the entire history of the ESPYs, and it's because it was the origination of the controversy at the ESPYs. I can't tell you the year because I don't remember the year, but there was a year that Barry Bonds won Best Baseball Player, and his entire speech was he walked up to the podium, said thank you, and went and sat back down. And there were people the next day on sports radio all across the country. How arrogant. He didn't even bother to thank his teammates. Like, dude, why should he have to?
Yeah.
They didn't win the award. He did.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a meaningless thing. But, like, whether it is, like, think about the recent history of the ESPYs. Remember last year when LeBron said that his career wasn't over and then jokingly dropped the lucky you? And we did the whole, like, oh, my God, LeBron is no longer a man of the people kind of thing. Caitlyn Jenner winning an award for courage. Michael Sam winning an award for courage. It is all because of something that Tyler and I know to be true because of the industry we work in. And I bet if you ask yourself, you know to be true as well. Nothing is happening in the summer, and we have to make up crap to talk about.
Exactly. The most notable thing that happens at the ESPYs is the tearjerker moments when Stuart Scott gets up there and gives his speech, or DeMar Hamlin gets up there and has to give the award, or gives the award to the medical team that saved his life when he died on the football field. Like, those moments are cool. But yes, I could care less who wins best male athlete of the year or whatever. I don't even know the awards because I don't pay attention to this kind of stuff. Like, it's very meaningless to me. And again, it's ESPN filling a slot when there's no other sports really going on.
Exactly. I kind of disagree with you. I think the best thing that happens at the ESPYs, and it hasn't happened in a long time since athletes have been hosting. But look, everybody in the room up for the award, they have no sense of humor about themselves or their colleagues. So you think back to 98 and go back and watch it on YouTube. It's going to look like Norm Macdonald bombed. Norm Macdonald was hysterical. Those people had no sense of humor about themselves at all. That was the problem.
I will say they do typically have, I guess, I don't know if they host it or just have somebody come up there to give an opening monologue. I have seen some of those in the past couple of years. Those have been entertaining. And again, when you have certain athletes that can laugh at themselves, that makes it a whole lot better. But yeah, I'm not making this appointment television tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no reason to. It shouldn't be appointment television. It shouldn't even be let me catch the replays tomorrow. I think the fact they are doing it on a night when there are sanctioned competitive sports is the beginning of the end of people knowing what happened.
You know, we're talking about this, like, all right, if you're a baseball player, you're not accepting your award. If you're, a high-level basketball player, you got some other things going on right now. Like, you're alienating a large portion of your athletes that aren't going to be there to accept their awards.
Yeah, it's just so dumb. Like, do something else. Go outside.
Touch some grass, right?
Touch some grass, as they say.
Well, we will we'll give a full and thorough breakdown of everything that happens with the ESPYs tonight. Talk about every single award winner, the whole 9 yards. That'll be our edition of the halftime show tomorrow. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Just a in-depth breakdown.
He is Dimitri Ravanos. He'll be back in here with me tomorrow as we wrap up the week on the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you again. A post-game show with Jay and Elijah coming up next on your Thursday afternoon here on The Game.
All right.